Gee, I wonder if she'd be available 2 Thursdays a month from here on. That was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
This meeting is recorded for live streaming and archiving on the district YouTube channel. Approval of agenda. I recommended a change, moving items K1B and K1C up to after public comment and before reports.
So moved. I'll second.
Moved by Ms. Gonzalez Mares, seconded by Ms. Martin. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Approval of minutes. Do we have minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Shunk, seconded by Ms. Gonzalez Mares. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I will abstain. I think so. Recognition of visitors and employee organizations. We have anyone representing employee organizations? Mike?
Mike Wilmarth.
Thank you. Recognitions of students of the month. We're on.
Good evening. Dr. Musetti, Napa Valley Unified School District's Board of Education, and the Ed Foundation. It is with extreme pride that I stand in front of you this evening. This continues to be one of my favorite components of high school principalship, so thank you. Something I've known for at Vintage High School is celebrating each 10%. That's every 18 days in school land, completed that during a given school year. This coming Tuesday, we will be at 30% done for the 2019-2020 school year. At Vintage, what that looks like is the 12-week progress report grades, fall concerts and plays, big game week, and the start to fall sports playoffs. 2 years ago, during the fires in the valley and missing nearly 2 weeks of school, Vintage was challenged to combine our homecoming and big game celebrations, traditions, and festivities. We used that opportunity to shift our theme for both to Crusher Strong. 2 years later, we continue to see evidence of success rooted in that Crusher Strong community. We have continued to face adversities, and in those adversities, as well as in our celebrations, we use this Crusher Strong to ground us. This evening, while there are many in this room facing challenging topics, decisions, and next steps, I hope that we can all reflect on the strength of our greater community of Napa and the roots of not only our traditions, but also our deep care for one another as human beings. Tonight, I have the honor of presenting to you two incredible human beings that represent the greatness of NVUSD's collective work. I will start with Vintage's Board Student of the Month for September, who you just heard the national anthem from, Diana Gonzalez. Diana, will you come up here? You heard Diana's amazing singing voice, but in addition to that, Diana maintains a 4.42 GPA. Her schedule every year at Vintage looks something like a couple of choir classes and then a load of honors and AP classes to round it out. Diana's passion for singing and choir is evident everywhere you look. She's a treasurer for choir. She regularly participates in the community outreach choir, which means she performs around our community as well as going to our elementary schools and middle schools to work with students there. She's part of Link Crew, and she's described by our peers, and really anyone that meets her, as the sweetest person in our senior class. Diana's dream is to go to NYU with plans to major in business and, not surprisingly, vocal music. My favorite part of Diana is that she happens to also be a champion of Pac-Man, my favorite video game. Diana.
Thank you. Good evening, Napa Valley Unified School District Board of Education, Dr. Musetti, and District Administration. It has been an honor to have been chosen for Board Student of the Month. My name is Diana Gonzalez. I have been an NVUSD student since elementary school, starting at Browns Valley Elementary and going on to Vintage High School. The culture at my schools has not only been academic, but also supportive and engaging. I've had incredible opportunities in the NVUSD system. I've traveled to Europe. I've toured college campuses. I've done work within my community. I've met amazing friends that will stay with me for the rest of my life. But my experience would not have been the same without my teachers. Tonight, I'd like to honor 3 of them who have really inspired me. First, I'd like to start with my English teacher, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Thomas has an incredible ability to connect with his students. His students flourish academically because they know their teacher respects them and what they have to say. As a student, he helped me not only to become confident in my writing, but in what I had to share. I had all these ideas that I would normally keep to myself, but he established such a supportive environment in class that I felt safe to share what I thought. He's a teacher I'll always remember, with his constantly asking, "Does that make sense?" and his quote board and his huge dictionary that he calls the Beast. But most of all, I'll remember him for his kindness and for giving me the confidence to use my voice. The next teacher I'd like to thank is my choir director, Mr. Teeters. When a teacher believes in a student, it can change their lives, and that's what happened to me in my freshman year. Our choir was traveling to Italy to perform Gabriel Fauré's Requiem. This piece included a soprano solo called Pie Jesu. I had absolutely no vocal training and no business auditioning for the solo, but I wanted to, and I did. To my shock, Mr. T chose me to perform the solo. By doing that, he gave me the confidence to develop my voice further. I've had incredible opportunities. I've sung at weddings, I've sung at sports games, I've even sung with the Broadway star. And it was all because Mr. Teeters had faith in me. Not only is he a remarkable teacher, he's a remarkable person. He's helped me find my voice, and I'm incredibly thankful for what he's given me. And last but certainly not least, I'd like to thank our co-director, Ms. Mendela. When I was choosing my choir class as a freshman, I saw one called Amendola Choir. I had no idea what it meant, but it sounded important. And then I met Ms. Mendela and understood that I had met someone important. Miss A is many things. She's fun, she's incredible at playing the piano, and she's a masterful storyteller. But most of all, Mrs. Mendela is kind and welcoming. She has a special talent for connecting with her students. As a freshman, it was daunting going into my first choir class. But Miss Mendela welcomed us all into the program. She was someone that we knew we could go to if we needed help. She made us feel like we belonged. And like Mr. Teeter, she believed in me. No matter what crazy song I wanted to perform or program I wanted to apply to, she would help me achieve it. I'll miss talking to her about musicals and sheet music next year, but I am thankful for the time I've had with her. Her compassionate and generous spirit will always inspire me. NVUSD has given me a lot. It's hard to believe I'll be graduating soon. But as I continue my journey, I will take with me the lessons and the values these teachers and all of NVUSD has given me. Thank you.
Hold on. Come back up.
Diana, come on back up. We're not done with you. All right. I must admit, this next introduction is geared a bit towards our superintendent and district administrators and the board, so if you're not getting the joke, I'm sorry about that. Superintendent and Board of Education, district administrators, you are well aware that NVUSD regularly contracts with a brilliant gentleman named Michael McDowell, who engages and teaches educators in our district regularly. What you may not have been aware of until tonight is that while there is a fancy consultant, who I admit has some brilliance about him, named Michael McDowell, Vintage has in fact the most brilliant and engaging Michael McDowell out there. Michael McDowell is our October Board Student of the Month, and I would like him to join me at the podium. Michael McDowell is Vintage's October Board Student of the Month. Michael is ranked in the top handful of students in his class and carries a 4.55 GPA. He does not have one B on his transcript to date. In addition to his academic success, Michael is a 4-year varsity pole vaulter, an Eagle Scout, and I'm just going to say a tech entrepreneur. He's going to explain this himself. I'll let him explain the 3D printing and all that goes along with that. Michael has already accepted been accepted to the Colorado School of Mines and plans to major in mechanical engineering with a focus on additive manufacturing. Please welcome Michael McDowell.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me all right? Good evening, NVUSD board, Dr. Musetti. It's an honor to be chosen for Student of the Month. Thank you very much. My name is Michael McDowell. A little bit about me. I'm a senior at Vintage High School. I started at El Centro and then went on to Rebel Middle School. Now I'm at Vintage. Like Ms. O'Connor said, I'm on the track team. I do pole vault. I'm not actually an Eagle Scout yet. I'm getting very close, a couple more months. A little thing about Scouts. If I would have been doing this when I was younger, I would have been petrified. I would not be able to talk in front of a group of people. But Scouts has really given me a confidence about myself that I feel like everybody could really use to have. If you guys all have young children or grandchildren, put them in Scouts. They'll love it. Well, I've learned a lot in school, and I like to branch out with my knowledge of what I've learned into like my hobbies. So I run like a 3D printing business where I sell some of my like custom designs online. I build computers and sell them to my friends and the freshmen at my school. But none of this would be possible without what I've learned through my career at NVUSD. Because of this, I'd like to thank three really important teachers to me. First, I'd like to start off with Mr. Mike Wilmarth. He was my 7th grade math teacher. Mr. Wilmarth really like opened my eyes to what it's like to be have fun doing math. I kind of knew that I was good at it, but Mr. Wilmarth really showed me that I need to take what I have and run with it. And without Mr. Wilmarth, I don't think I would be where I am right now. Mr. Wilmarth ran this program called Mathletes. In fact, I remember being in this room in 6th grade doing Mathletes, and it was like a competition for. It was like a Jeopardy but for math, and it was really fun. And I feel like that just really put me and a lot of other kids on a good track academically. I remember Mr. Wilmarth was really dedicated to us. He made Khan Academy style videos that he would put on his website to help us even if we were sick, so we wouldn't miss any of the class. So thank you, Mr. Wilmarth, for getting me off on a right foot. Next, I would like to thank Mr. Paul Brochard for being such an amazing teacher. I have him in 2 classes this year. He is my AP Computer Science teacher and my AP Physics teacher, as well as being my down the street neighbor. He's one of the most, Mr. Brochard is one of the most dedicated teachers I know. I don't think he would ever let a student fail his class. He is such a dedication, and he has such a willingness to and wanting to help everybody. It's really wonderful. I love being with Mr. Brochard and just knowing that he's always there for me. If I ever need help, I can always go to him. I feel like we also have a lot in common too. We seem to have similar personalities. I honestly feel sort of like I'm going to be like Mr. Brochard when I grow up. Mr. Brochard also, his son Christian, he graduated a couple years ago. I'm friends with him, and Mr. Brochard's son introduced me to pole vault. Without that, that's been a big chapter of my life that I really feel like I would have missed out on without him. One of my favorite memories of Mr. Brochard is last year when I was at one of the competitions at the end of the year for track. Mr. Brochard drove all the way up to Santa Rosa to watch me compete without Christian even being there. It was really nice. Overall, this year, Mr. Brochard's classes are what I really look forward to in my day. 3rd period and 6th period, I can't wait to go to. So Mr. Brochard, thank you very much for always being there for me and helping me to succeed. And finally on my list, I would like to thank Mr. Scott Merkner for being my honors pre-calculus teacher last year. Mr. Merkner's class was wonderful because that is what made me get up in the morning. Typically, getting ready for school, it's a chore, and I don't want to. But I can honestly say that I was genuinely excited to go to Mr. Merkner's class in the morning. What really separated this from many other classes is that Mr. Mertner has a way of connecting with the students. He's can relate to us. It's almost like it's almost like he's our peer. He understands like what's happening with us and can see things from our point of view. And because of this, it makes it a really constructive learning environment. I feel like I learned the best in his class because it was really low key, and we were able to concentrate, but also like not like worry about like I'm not having a hard way of putting words in this, but you know what I'm talking about, Mr. Merkner. Mr. Merkner standing back there is going to scoff at this, but he knows that I had to bring up the banana car at least once when I was up here. None of you will understand that, but I had to bring it up. Thank you. Overall, Mr. Mertner was there for me through the college process. He was super quick with the turnaround of letters of recommendation. I'm really appreciative for that. He really solidified in me that I knew that I wanted to go into a STEM degree and just set me up really well for that stage of my life. Well, to the three of you teachers and the rest of the NVUSD staff who I have had in my course through high school and middle school and elementary school, thank you very much for making me the person who I am.
Are we ready for, all right. Well, good evening. I'd like to thank you, Board of Trustees and Dr. Massetti, for inviting us here tonight. My name is Drew Herron. I'm the coordinator for the Independent Study Program. Students who come to Independent Study usually come for a variety of reasons. It could be that they want a smaller learning environment. They might have some anxiety. They might be credit deficient, or they just want a fresh start, and amongst a whole bunch of other reasons. But they come and they are able to get some individual attention and really be able to have that chance to be successful, not only at school, but in life. We have two great students here tonight, and they definitely demonstrate the resiliency and dedication it takes to not only be successful in the classroom, but be successful as they move into their young adult lives. Our first student tonight is Anahi Salinas. Anahi, will you join me? Anahi started in our program in August 2017 as a freshman. She's been here for 3 years. She's a junior now. She currently has a 3.55 GPA. And one thing that is unique, you may be asking yourself, why do we have a junior coming up here for Board Student of the Month? And that's because she's going to be graduating 1 year early this June. So she definitely exemplifies a lot of the great things that we are doing at Independent Study, and also is a very hard worker. So Anahi.
Thank you. Thanks to the school board and Napa Valley Unified School District for this chance to be honored. And thanks to the superintendent, Dr. Musetti, for giving me this chance. Thank you to all the teachers that have supported me at Independent Studies. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to stand here today. I want to thank my parents and siblings for being here and supporting me tonight. Thank you for believing in me. The reason I came to Independent Studies was because of my depression and anxiety. 2 years ago, I wouldn't have imagined I would be up here making a speech, let alone be out of my house. My depression and anxiety controlled me for years. But through the years, I learned that you decide how it affects your life. You decide how long it's going to control you. I finally decided I wasn't going to let it control me anymore. And I'm proud of myself because when I finally decided, I felt like I could finally breathe. I had control over my life again. Napa Valley Independent Studies has impacted me in a big way. It has helped me slowly overcome my social anxiety and inspired me to look forward to a future, something I never thought possible. I am looking forward to attending university and pursuing a career in psychology to help those who are just like me. I want to give hope to those who don't think there is any, because there is hope. Hope is what got me here today. I want to give a special thanks to my therapist for supporting me and listening to me when nobody would. Thank you for believing in me. I'm proud of my recovery journey and I can't wait for what's to come. Thank you.
Just want to say how proud I am of Anahi getting up here, because when we first told her she was going to have to speak, she said, "I'm not coming." So, very, very glad that she's here tonight. Our next student is Taylor Bagg. Taylor, come on up. Taylor started Independent Study last year, literally almost 1 year to the day, and came to us as a junior. She currently has a 3.97 GPA. The one thing I would say about, or things I would say about Taylor is that she's not only resilient, she's a fighter, and she definitely owns her own learning. She will be graduating early this December because of all the hard work that she has put in. Taylor Bagg.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Taylor, I'm 17 years old, and I'm currently a senior at NVIS. I would like to start off by thanking my mom, my boyfriend, and my sister for supporting and helping me when they knew I needed it most. Most importantly, I want to thank my gorgeous daughter Ava for motivating me to keep going, teaching me patience, and more than anything else, showing me a love that's indescribable. I also want to give a huge thank you to the principal, staff members, and every teacher at NVIS. They not only supported me through one of the toughest experiences of my life, but they made my well-being their priority. NVIS staff members don't just know my name or simply that I'm a student, they know me as a person and what I've been through. When attending Napa High, I had no friends, I was always irritated by the long days, and I never felt like the teachers cared about me personally. On September 23rd, 2018, a few weeks into my junior year, I found out that I was pregnant. 1,000 things rushed through my head all at once: school, my future, money, time, and support. This is what made me decide that Independent Studies would suit me better than Napa High School. Being able to adjust my school schedule to what was convenient for me is what I needed in order to be a good mom and continue my schooling. NVIS has taught me to be independent. It gave me a place to feel like I didn't need 15 friends just to fit in, or to look amazing every day and just to not be judged, because frankly that's not possible with a baby. I am by far most proud of being a mom. Being a teen mom was never my plan, and it is far from easy. But at the end of the day, through the few hours of broken sleep, fussy days, spit up, and blowout diapers, simply hearing a giggle makes it all more worth it. I am lucky to have an amazing boyfriend who has helped tremendously and jumped headfirst into being the best dad that I could have ever imagined. I am proud that we are both continuing our schooling no matter how hard it gets in order to give our daughter the best life possible. After high school, I plan on attending Sierra Community College to get all my general ed requirements and eventually transfer to a 4-year. I would love to be a women's health nurse practitioner if possible, and I know that plans are constantly changing, so I will have to wait and see what the future holds for me. My life is incredibly busy now, but I would never change any of it for the world. I would like to thank the school board and NVIS again for giving me this opportunity because hard work pays off. Thank you.
Now, if we could get all of the students of the month up here in front, and the teachers too, if they're here, come on up. This is a chance for everyone to take another picture of our students of the month. So, Mike.
Right in front of us.
Do we have more teachers out there?
Hey, Cindy.
Yeah. And so are these. Thank you, students of the month. Although we would like you to hang around to watch the rest of this, this might be a good time to sneak out and celebrate your student of the month status. So thank you and congratulations. Okay, I'm going to move on to item G, public comment on non-agenda items. Members of the audience may address the board on any school-related matter that is not on the agenda. Board will not take action on any issue raised during this section of the agenda, inasmuch as board action is limited to posted agenda items. Speakers are requested to limit their comments to 3 minutes. I have two speaker cards. Marissa Badilla and James Hinton.
Buenas tardes, honorables miembros del comité. Mi nombre es Marisa Badilla y soy mamá de 3 hijos.
Marisa, voy a interpretarle yo, si después de una oración me da oportunidad de interpretarle. Por favor, gracias.
Buenas tardes, miembros del comité.
Good afternoon, members of the community.
Mi nombre es Marisa Badilla
My name is Marisa Badilla.
y soy mamá de 3 hijos,
I am a mother of 3 children,
los cuales han atendido la escuela primaria Phillips Magnet
which have attended elementary Phillips
Esta escuela es una escuela saludable
This is a healthy school,
y siempre me he sentido bienvenida.
and I have always felt welcome.
El director junto con el personal de la escuela
The principal with the rest of the staff,
siempre nos han hecho sentir bien.
they have always made us feel well.
En la escuela se siente el calor humano
At school, you can feel the warmth
del director, maestros y demás personal.
from the school principal, teachers, and staff.
Ahí los estudiantes reciben el apoyo necesario
There, the students receive the support necessary.
y voy a hablar en específico de mi hijo Oswaldo Badilla.
And I am going to speak in particular to my son Oswaldo Badilla.
Él es el mayor y él está estudiando en Berkeley, en la universidad pública número 1 del mundo.
I'm going to speak about my oldest son who's attending UC Berkeley,
Estudiando para un bachillerato en español.
who is studying his bachelor's in Spanish.
También quiero mencionar que mi hijo es empleado en el distrito de Napa
He is also employed by Napa Valley Unified School District
como intérprete bilingüe de educación especial.
as an interpreter for bilingual education.
Gracias al apoyo de nuestra comunidad y seguridad que nos ha dado nuestra escuela Phillips,
Thank you to the support and the security that the school Phillips has given us.
mis hijos siguen adelante y siguen cumpliendo sus propósitos en la vida
My children continue with the purpose in their life,
para ser buenos ciudadanos
to be good citizens
y hombres de bien
and good men
para esta gran nación que los ha visto crecer.
for this great nation that has seen them grow.
Les invito a que visiten nuestra escuela
I invite you to visit our school
y sientan por ustedes mismos el calor humano y vean lo seguro y saludable que es nuestra escuela. Muchas gracias.
I welcome you to visit our school and feel the human touch. Thank you.
Gracias.
Mr. Hinton.
Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, excuse me. James Hinton, 3574 Hunter Circle, Napa, California. You know, you guys have a packed audience here, and there's some reasons why. And if you want to avoid these type of meetings a couple years down the road, I want to let you know that I am circulating 3 different California state ballot petitions to avoid this kind of stuff. Recently, one of your people serving on the 7-Eleven committee signed one of my petitions in front of Rayleigh's and told me that one of the reasons why they have to do this is because the rent is so high. A lot of families are being forced out of our area and can't go to school. So there is a new rent stabilization initiative in California that we're circulating. And there's another one that is the Family Home Protection and Fairness and Property Tax Reassessments Act. What this does is it helps basically older people, disabled people, and victims of natural disasters relocate the property taxes, but at the same time it closes corporate tax loopholes that hurt our schools and our public safety. And this initiative is expected to bring in $1.5 billion a year for schools and public safety. But most important is this new initiative that just came out. It's called the California Schools and Local Community Funding Act of 2020. And what this sucker is going to do, it's going to close Prop 13 down on commercial properties and industrial properties. And I think as a board, you guys should consider supporting this and encouraging people to sign the petition and then to back it up with a vote, so 2 years from now or whenever, you have plenty of funding and we don't have to face a crowd like this and make tough decisions like you have to make today. So there are people circulating these petitions out in the public. I encourage you to do some more research on them, to look them up and consider supporting them. Support them individually, support them as a board, but you know, our schools need more money. Thank you.
Thank you, James.
So with that, we're going to move, as we reported earlier, to items K1B and K1C on your agenda. That would be resolutions to close and consolidate Mount George and resolution to close and consolidate Yountville Elementary School. So I have,
President Hurtado, we have one
Oh, yeah.
announcement for the record
Yes.
related to the item.
yeah.
I'm going to invite Megan from Lozano Smith to come to the podium.
Good evening, Board. Thanks for having me here tonight. I am here to give some information on the on this item and to address some concerns that have been raised at the last meeting and in a letter that you received from Council. And the item that's before you, sorry, my name is Megan Macy from Lozano Smith. I should have said that part. So the item that's before you has a number of actions associated with it, and of course there's two different action items, but they're both essentially the same procedural function. The first relates to closure, the second relates to consolidation of the schools, and the third part of it is an exemption from CEQA, and you'll be asked to act by the resolution on all of those items. One of the issues and the concerns that were raised by members of the public at the last meeting was about potential traffic impacts, and that could potentially relate to the notice of exemption under CEQA. In an abundance of caution, staff asked us to retain a traffic consultant, and there was a final version of the advisory memorandum from the traffic consultant that we received very late yesterday, and there were copies at the back, and I know that they were made available to you also prior to this meeting, so they're available to the public tonight. In short, the traffic consultant, Fear and Peers, confirmed staff's analysis that the reassignment of Yountville and Mount George Elementary School students to alternative school sites, Willow and Alta Heights respectively, would not result in substantive negative transportation outcomes, even if all of the students attend their reassigned school. The report concluded that not only does sufficient transportation capacity exist at these locations, but the reassignment would likely lower the aggregate vehicle miles traveled for the student population. Specifically, the report indicates that vehicle miles traveled for Mount George students would decrease by 53%, while the vehicle miles traveled for Yountville students will decrease by 48.7% with an aggregate difference of 50.7%. This report is entered into the record in support of both resolution number 20-08 and resolution number 20-09, and specifically the recommendation for the board to adopt a notice of exemption from CEQA related to the school closures. There's no evidence to support a fair argument that the project will create traffic impacts, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have related to the CEQA aspects of the item that's before you. Thank you.
Only question for me is what makes us exempt from CEQA?
Sure. There's a categorical exemption, and it's laid out, the technical parts of it are laid out in the resolution. CEQA, if you have a project under CEQA, you have to do an analysis unless there is either a statutory or a categorical exemption, which is all laid out in the law. There is a categorical exemption for school closure, and there's also case law to support in this type of instance where the enrollment shift is going to not increase the overall capacity of the schools to support that exemption.
I have a question for the audience. Does everyone here in the audience know what CEQA means? Because if you don't, she can tell you. Does everyone know? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. So the California Environmental Quality Act requires that anytime a public agency takes on a project, and in this case, the school board and the school district is the lead agency for that. Typically, it's the city or the county if you have a big development project. In this instance, because you are a public agency, you are the lead agency, and you're required to make a finding as to whether there are any environmental impacts of the action that you're taking that are going to be detrimental. Thank you.
Megan, I would imagine the reduction statistics that you shared for the record have to do with the fact that the schools are also currently heavily openly enrolled.
That's right, though the assumptions in the traffic study assume that all of the students would go to those reassigned schools, so that what the analysis states is that it would probably be actually less if there was open enrollment and it was more dispersed throughout the district.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I have a million speaker cards. And normally this part of an agenda item is allotted 20 minutes. I don't know unless we have speed talkers that we're going to get that in. So what I would like to ask the board permission to do is to do public comment on these two items, since some of them just say school closures, to run until 8:45, and then we'll evaluate. I'll see how many people we have left, and we'll go from there. So
that sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah. Yes. Sure. No, only I can do that. No, it's, again, we would like to limit each individual speaker to 3 minutes. With 27 cards in my hand, I'm going to ask you, it never happens, but I'm the eternal optimist, that if someone has already stated your position prior to you coming up, if you just kind of acknowledge that that's been done, and we just kind of move it. But if you want to, but like I say, I don't know that in my tenure as president that's ever happened, but I'll put it out there for you. With that, and then once we go through public comment, then the board will have a discussion, and then I will call for the vote. Okay? Mayor John Dunbar.
President Hurtado, trustees, Director or Dr. Massetti. I first want to start out by thanking Dr. Massetti for being available and candid after she exposed the financial crisis in which the district finds itself. I respect her attempts to keep the district from state receivership, which would lead to even more financial and operational challenges. What I don't understand is why it took Dr. Massetti's detailed analysis of the district's financial status within just a few months on the job to uncover problems unidentified or ignored by long-tenured district staff, this board, or the office of Education. The failure to properly evaluate the financial conditions in the district prior to that has led to the imminent closure of Yountville and Mount George elementary schools. The district points to a declining birth rate and related drop in enrollment, combined with a reduction in state funding. However, the district's own charts show the evidence has existed for at least 5 years, yet the district continued to operate with deficit spending and unsustainable budget projections. The data being used to justify the closures seems to show district personnel repeatedly presented budgets that were incomplete and/or inaccurate. One example is a 3-year budget that justified the multi-million-dollar cost of building a new school, but failed to include the millions of dollars necessary for ongoing operations or maintenance. Responsibility is not limited to the district staff. Where was the oversight by the Office of Education, which apparently signed off on these budgets? In Yountville, we have invested significant public and private resources to enhance the educational and personal experiences of our elementary school students and families, and to integrate them into our community inside and outside the classroom. Because of the town's care programs, Yountville Elementary School has been a logical choice for parents that work hard to make our Up Valley businesses successful, an effort that benefits the entire Napa Valley. I understand you have to look at the numbers, which includes the entire student population in the district, but public education does not operate in a vacuum of buildings. The best public learning includes investment for families and the local community. The decision before this Board of Trustees is one that will define your values and commitment to high-quality education, which goes hand in hand with the financial realities of the district. Unfortunately, it appears it will be at the expense of hundreds of students, families, and a community that has embraced and supported quality public education in an intimate, welcoming, and effective environment for more than 100 years. Now, all we can hope for following this painful process is that district personnel and this board will show an awareness and understanding that will improve the oversight and financial management of the entire district so more students and families don't have to face similar consequences.
May I? So that applause kind of cuts into the time. So we all know you'll support most of the statements made, but it does cut into the time. Belga Ramos.
Good evening, Chair, Board, Dr. Massetti, and staff. My name is Belia Ramos. I am the 5th District Supervisor of the County of Napa. My comments are my own this evening and not those of the county. I feel the sense of responsibility as a community member to point out something that is quite unique to Mount George, and that is, it is truly your last remaining rural school in the County of Napa. When I go and I speak and represent this community, I always speak about the rural character of our community. And Mount George absolutely embodies that. It provides a place for those that live a country life to be able to apply those values with the baccalaureate background that they have at this IB school, and to carry that forward and to carry that into their community and to be that sense of place. You, more than anyone, knows that community starts at schools. So I ask of you, what happens to Coombsville without Mount George? Where is the community place of gathering for Coombsville without Mount George? While I understand that what we're really talking about today is a philosophical change in which this school board has made a commitment to urbanize our school centers and to take the rural character of our schools out. And you're going to do what you see as fiscally prudent going forward. But I ask you to consider, if you don't have these small schools, then what defines our rural character? What does this little town of Yountville have as its center? What does the community of Coombsville have as its center? I, for one, am proud of our rural character, and I know that these families will be just fine wherever they end up, and that they will receive an education wherever they end up, and it will be quality. But I ask you, consider the character that they come with and what they bring to our community overall. Thank you.
Laura Holquist, followed by Jennifer Hines, I think. Him.
Good evening. I have written and rewritten what I was going to say at least 6 times in the last few days. But it has dawned on me this morning that in 3 minutes, I probably won't convince any of you to change the way you're going to vote on school closures tonight. I am guessing that all of you woke up this morning knowing exactly how you were going to vote in regards to Mount George and Yountville. So instead of bringing my fire and brimstone to my 3 minutes of time, I'm going to ask that if you do vote to close Mount George and Yountville, that you have the courage to be on campus tomorrow at either pickup or drop-off at either site to answer questions and to help families and students understand what their next steps are. I realize the district will be there to support, but I feel that it is also your responsibility as our final decision makers to support the staff and our school communities that you are voting to close. I would like to take the rest of my time to thank all of the families and community members.
Excuse me, you need to address the board.
Oh, I apologize. Can I stand here?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Laura Holquist, and I'm a teacher at Mount George. I am also a parent of a child who had their school consolidated a few years ago. Sadly, after tonight, I most likely will have been on both sides of this battle, as a parent and now as an employee. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for seeing the value in what we do. Thank you for taking time away from your families and everyday lives to show up and speak out on what is happening to our schools and our district. At a time when many employees in the district are feeling unappreciated, you have kept us going. We have fought the good fight, but it's not over. 2020 and 2022 are re-election years. We have board members voting tonight that have already closed 4 schools and consolidated 2 others before even walking into today's board meeting. We have board members that have approved yearly budgets that have depleted our reserves from 20% in 2008 to 3.7% in 2019. At our Mount George community meeting, Dr. Musetti and Mike Pearson, Mr. Pearson said that he knew the 7th period day at the middle schools was not a financially viable plan, but our board still approved it. Members of this board have approved a loan that will cost us $154 million to pay off when the original amount borrowed was $22 million. We have tried to be David against the Goliath these last few months, and honestly, it might be time for some of us to be the Goliaths. In true IB form, we need some thinkers, we need some inquirers, we need some open-minded, knowledgeable, reflective community members who are willing to come forward and make a change in 2022. We need board members who are going to do what's best for our children.
Good evening, Dr. Musetti and members of the board. My name is Jennifer Heim, and I am a Mount George mom. In our last meeting, the word trust kept coming up with regards to this process, school closure, and the district's strategic plan moving forward. That word has struck with me. We should be able to trust our elected officials and this process, but also verify all of the important points, details, facts, and data being presented. We haven't been able to do that. In the final 7-11 committee meeting, it was voted to recommend to close Yountville and Mount George. However, the conclusion came after new considerations for school consolidation were suddenly brought to the table. The words, "We can consolidate your school, but you must first recommend the school closure," were repeated several times. There are problems with that recommendation based on consolidation. According to the district's ratio, even if all students from Mount George go to Alta Heights, not all of the teachers can go there. That is not consolidation. Secondly, if we take IB over to Alta Heights, and if they accept that in their community, it will take many, many, many months to do, and that is not consolidation. And if there is not an option for IB, our students and teachers at Mount George will be dismantled, our families will move out of district, opt for private, or be scattered. That is not consolidation, and our children, our teachers, and our staff deserve way better. Is this emotional? Yes. No one wants to be displaced within the school system. Should this be an emotional decision? Absolutely not. This decision needs to be fiscally aligned with avoiding a state takeover. And to me, it's very clear that shutting down Mount George at its current operating cost doesn't even come close to bridging that gap. Please take a moment to reflect on this process and the last several months. I'm exhausted, but I'm not done fighting for our schools. Are you? Mount George is a very special school to our community, and shutting it down will not resolve the district's issues now or in the future. You will be faced with cutting more schools, and I am afraid you'll be sitting here again. The last several weeks have reinforced the community's frustration and despair, and ironically has created a negative atmosphere for prospective families who may be considering Napa Unified School District. If, in this very moment, you can't say you're 100% sure that school closure is the answer, if you cannot verify that this is the most fiscally sound solution to the district's budget crisis, then the answer to tonight's vote is crystal clear. It's not emotional. It's 100% no.
You should demonstrate that for people. There you go. There you go. Thank you, sweetie. Sabrina Wolfson, and then Divine Floyd.
Good evening, President Hurtado and members of the board. The district's rationale for closing Mount George is that it's inequitable to keep the school open because it costs more to run than other district schools. The district has unfairly pitted the Mount George and Yes communities against the other school districts by asserting that our children are unfairly taking away resources from other students. This is far from the reality. Mount George students are not taking away anything from other district students, and the district's SARC data shows just that. As you all know, the district spends less per Mount George child in unrestricted general funds than the district average and less than 6 other schools in the district. So let's finally dispel the myth that keeping Mount George open is inequitable or a drain on the district's resources. Before making this decision, I urge you to ask yourself, what does the district and the community stand to gain from closing Mount George, and what does the community stand to lose? In terms of gains, the answer is not much other than questionable savings and false promises. Staff states that it will save the entire $406,000 per year that it takes to operate Mount George, but we all know that won't be the case. Dr. Massetti admitted at the last meeting that there will be transportation costs and costs to expand after-school programs to accommodate displaced students, but we haven't even seen what those costs were or how they'll offset the projected savings. We also know that any savings will be offset by students leaving the district, and many of the operating costs, like maintenance, will follow the students. In terms of promises, the district promises that if we close these 2 schools, the financial position will improve and they'll be able to improve programming. But the reality is that the district will still be in the hole $500,000 after closing 2 schools, and will have to continue to make more cuts. And there won't be any improvements in programming anytime soon because the district has those capital appreciation bonds to pay off. On the other hand, the district stands to lose a great deal by closing Mount George. The district will lose a high-quality educational institution that has been in our community since 1936 and that raises students who are principled, open-minded, caring, culturally aware, inquirers, and risk-takers. You'll lose a tight-knit group of dedicated IB-trained teachers, some who have worked at Mount George for over 25 years. You'll lose a 13-year investment in the International Baccalaureate program totaling over $150,000. You'll lose an established IB program that cannot be easily replicated and that's aligned with the district's goals to implement inquiry-based learning. You'll lose a culturally diverse community of families from all over the globe, including French, Swedish, Persian, Egyptian, Asian, Latino, Portuguese, British, Turkish, and Irish families. You'll lose a place where our children feel safe and confident, and where every single teacher, staff person, and student knows them by name. You'll lose an international curriculum that teaches cultural appreciation and a global perspective. You'll lose a school with consistent enrollment, a school with the lowest rate of chronic absenteeism, and a school in high demand where 75% of the kids drive from other neighborhoods to attend. Please do the right thing and vote to keep Mount George open. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Devin Floyd. It's a shocker, but I'm a Mount George parent as well. My children are sixth generation Napans. More than 12 of my immediate family members have attended Mount George. Tradition, morals, and ethics are important to our family. Unfortunately, I cannot say that's the same for the NVUSD staff. Mount George is high performing, and this is important to my family. It not only shows in testing, it shows in everyday life how our kids treat one another and how Mount George kids continue to thrive in middle school, high school, and beyond. After touring and talking to principals at other schools, it is disheartening to see the funding and resource gaps between schools. Mount George outperforms many of these schools with a fraction of the resources. Imagine if NVUSD worked with Mount George instead of against. Think how amazing we could be. I'm tired of hearing that it is more important to bring all of the other schools up to par, make them equal. They are given funding and resources and have no support from the district to use that to their advantage. We have a program that works with hardly any money, and our school is the one you choose to close. Our program is what it is because our teachers, staff, and families believe in it. You can throw all the money you want to the other schools, but if their families aren't involved in the education process, the majority of the students won't be either. Mount George's community is what makes Mount George special. It is also concerning when trustees Hurtado and Martin have said at previous meetings, academic achievement isn't important. Then why are you sitting up there? What is your purpose as a Board of Education? People keep saying how resilient our kids are, but it isn't NVUSD, the Board of Education, or any other person to make that call. It is my call as a parent what is best for my son and daughter. If NVUSD had started this closure with a plan, given families adequate time, our families would not be frantically searching for schools that best fit our children. We have already made that choice once, and that choice was Mount George. If NVUSD, not our parents and our teachers, had done their research, they could have found a better fit for Mount George students and teachers. The district made it our community's job to find solutions, but each time these solutions were presented, the staff would make excuses as to why they wouldn't work. Trustee Jankowicz, last week you said it was time to write a new story at NVUSD. I am here to tell you, respectfully, by closing Mount George, you are writing the wrong story. You are taking a valuable piece of this history of Napa and this community and doing us a huge injustice. Thank you.
Kirsty Shelton and Holly Moore.
Good evening, President Hurtado and members of the board. My name is Kirsty Shelton, and before I speak on what I came here to speak about, I'd like just to take a quick opportunity. Dr. Musetti asked if anybody understood what CEQA was. I'm the one who has been before the both 7-11 committee twice, and now this is the second time before you to urge you to do CEQA. I'd like to just briefly reiterate about the memorandum dated yesterday from Fear and Peers. I respect Fear and Peers dearly. I work with them every day. I'm an environmental and land use planner, and I'm here to share that this memorandum is incorrect for today's CEQA law. In July 1st of 2020 is when you're going to have to analyze vehicle miles traveled. Currently, you have to analyze level of service. So, if this was in July 2nd, 2020, this memorandum would be accurate. Currently, it is not because it looks at a reduction of vehicle miles travels for people going from A to B. This is in regards to reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. Level of service means if an intersection is congested, if there's backup at schools. So currently, as knowing City of Napa general plan, I briefly looked, the intersection of Alta Heights where Mount George would consolidate is a level of service D. If you've ever been there at drop-off, respectively respect that they were witnessing in October that it was not congested. I live there. It's congested. So I urge you, if you are to conduct CEQA, first of all, I don't believe it qualifies as a categorical exemption, which we can go into detail in a minute. But currently, I think this traffic memorandum is looking at vehicle miles traveled, which California Environmental Quality Act has asked for everybody to analyze as of July 1st, 2020. Currently, you have to look at level of service. If I was the environmental planner working with Fair and Peers, my best friend's Chris Mitchell, director, I would say, let's do both. Let's be overly cautious and do both. So with that said, now that I have a minute, I just want to briefly speak on my experience of this process. I feel like it's hurried, in haste, in September, in Napa. Any mother in September has no time. I'm currently sick, and other people who have worked on this project with me also are sick. In September, 72% of the city of Napa population work in the wine industry. It's harvest. Last harvest just finished last week. Please give the public an opportunity to participate. The point of this process, the point of you guys being here today is to represent the public. Please give the public an opportunity. Continue this item. We understand the issue. We're here to help you on this dilemma. You don't have to make an action tonight. And if you do make an action tonight, I urge you to respect the staff and ask them to actually analyze CEQA. I have 12 seconds to make 3 quick points. Again, the demographicer said there was 1,000 housing units. There's 2,645 as of 2018. And I have many more points I would love to make, but I want to respect your time.
Good evening. My name is Holly Moore. I'm the parent of a third-generation Mount George Mustang. Woo! I have attended or closely followed each of the district and 7-Eleven committee meetings regarding the potential closures. I have a few comments and a question for clarification, if that's okay. Ms. Jankowicz, at the last meeting, you responded to Mr. Gracia's mention of Mount George as one of the top-performing schools in the district. You said there's many ways to define a successful school. I'm curious as to what this board looks at collectively to define or even just acknowledge a school as successful, and where Mount George and Yes measure up with that. Ms. Waters, at the last meeting, you responded to the public commentary where several students spoke to try and save their beloved Mount George. You said, I know these kids will be successful wherever they go. They will be just fine. Fine. Board of Trustees, you are looking at a room full of people who love their schools. Children, parents, and teachers, we love our schools. We believe in their missions. We value and cherish the education our children are receiving at them. We respect and nurture the campuses. We have roots and foundations solidly planted in the very core of these communities. These schools are more than schools. They're our whole family's second homes. Over the course of these few months, watching the 7-Eleven committee meetings and listening to the tone of the data provided by the district staff, I've realized something. This love we have for our schools, you have to experience it to understand it. The people who would be okay with their child's school closing, those that would vote for a school closure despite an outpouring community response and data to back it up its worth, you don't understand. If you've never felt that love about your school or your child's school, you couldn't possibly fathom these feelings that we have. And I think that probably is the largest problem that this district has. Even more than money, because this has so much more value. I understand this is a business, but your business is about children. And our children need nurturing. NVUSD, you are losing the love. I don't think many of you, Board of Trustees, district staff, even the current 7-Eleven committee members that are present in this room tonight have had that love. It's the experience of that love that would push you into more creative problem-solving avenues. It would tug at your memory and remind you how precious it is, and you would fight for its preservation and these children's rights to experience it. It would take closed-minded words like, there's no other option, and it's all part of the hard work we're doing, out of your mouth and replace them with, let's try and look at some other ways. It would force you to look at things outside the box and throw your over 300 children per school cookie cutter away. I am so sad for you that you don't know what this love is like. You have really missed out. Should Mount George close, this will undoubtedly be my child's last year with NVUSD. Despite that, I hope and I'll vote to make sure the district children get some of that love on this board. Parents, we need to demand more from the people elected and hired to serve our children in their best interests, more than just fine. Mount George and Yes families, if they vote tonight to close our schools, we mourn this love together. School love is obviously a dying privilege in this valley, and if they take that away from us tonight, I'd like you to know that it's been a pleasure standing in your company, Yountville. Thank you.
Adrian Boudreau and Denise Eugenio.
Good evening, school board, superintendent. I recently emailed you all a analysis of a survey that we did for Mount George parents to try to figure out what people were going to do. And the primary reason we did this was, as you know, we're all very connected and we want to know what our friends are going to be doing, what our school is going to be doing, give our teachers the best chance to stay together if our school is decided to be closed. A couple things that I think were important that came out of that. Primarily when asked how important the IB program was to their decision to attend Mount George, 70.4% of parents said it was very important. Another 23.5% said it was somewhat important. That's about 94% altogether, at least figured that program into their choice to attend that school. When asked if there was another school other than Alta Heights that would be willing to start an IB program and if parents would be willing to attend there, 83% of parents said yes. These came from about 86 different responses for over 121 students. It's over 50% of the population. And at every big breaking point, when I had about 25, when I had 40, and then when I had 80 responses, the percentages stayed pretty similar. So I'm feeling fairly confident that would apply to the general population of the school. The other thing that kind of came up is what would they do? What would we do next year? About 32.5% said they would attend Alta Heights. Another 40% said they would open enroll. And then probably what was actually most shocking to me, I didn't think it would be this high. 14.2% said they would pursue private or charter schools. Another 5% said they would go back to their home school. Less than 1% said they would leave to go homeschooled at home, but another 6% said they would leave to go to another district. When you apply those numbers, that comes out to about 32 attending a private school or charter, another 15 would attend another district. Combined, that's about $470,000 in ADA each year that could be potentially lost. That number might be very high. It's just an estimate. It's just what people are saying. But even if you cut that in half, that is still $235,000 a year in ADA that you will be losing with these students leaving the district. And I hope that you take that into consideration when you're looking at an operating cost of $406,000. That's $171,000 in savings, and that's not even including any other transportation fees, maintenance fees, security fees at the sites that are abandoned. So just think that's important. I have copies to hand out too. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Mount George adds great value to this school district. It is the leader among other schools by fully adopting inquiry-based learning approach to learning. And do you know how I know that? Because I looked it up in your strategic plan and you identified schools and how long have they progressed in order to achieve that inquiry-based learning. It is something that you value, and I want to make sure that it is still on the top of your mind. Studies have shown that the value of the IB program in the primary years is very, very crucial. These are the formative years. I've heard people make comments saying that, you know, K through 5th grade is kind of similar curriculum, but I want to make sure that we do not lose sight of the fact that it is very important, the early development stages, okay? The formative years during that time, and that's why this IB program is so crucial, especially during those years. So I'm not the only one that sees value in Mount George, and neither are you. The community as well sees value in it because there's demand. Families take their kids to Mount George. While we've seen a decrease in enrollments across all different schools, there's data that we put together, which Sabrina Wolfson has passed along, that has shown over the years, Mount George has actually continued to have steady increases in enrollment. So that is how we know that there is demand for Mount George, and there's the value in that. And what I'm saying is, why don't we lean into that, right? I understand that Mount George, from this data, what is it telling us? It has allowed us to bring other families into the district that normally wouldn't have been there because they see the value in the program. It has allowed you to retain families in this district that otherwise would have gone somewhere else. So please, think about that. Lean into that. Maybe leverage that to increase our enrollments over the years. Let's talk about the impacts. We know that there's many benefits for small schools. Those who benefit the most from a small school setting are actually those in a lower socioeconomic bracket. Studies have shown that it has helped decrease the achievement gap between those students and their more affluent peers. Now, on the flip side, those students that would benefit the most from a smaller school setting, those students will be most impacted from increasing the class sizes. Okay, so people have told me, my child will be fine, and you know what, she probably will be. But let's talk about those who will be impacted. So when we talk about impacts, those students of the lower income bracket will be impacted, and let's keep that in mind. It's not just our students, it's not just my daughter, and that's why I'm here today advocating to keep Mount George open. Thank you.
Catherine Borsetto and Christy Devine.
Good evening, Chair, Board, and staff. I am an attorney here on behalf of parent groups from Yountville and from Mount George. And I do want to address CEQA, and that is the main reason that I am appearing before the board on behalf of these parents. It is our position that the board is required to postpone this and engage in a CEQA determination. We believe that there is insufficient evidence in order for the board to have made the determination or made the recommendation for these school closures. And I cite in a letter that I'd like the court to incorporate into the record the reasons for this.
We're a board.
Or I'm sorry, the board, my apologies. But I'd like to address the inconsistencies and the insufficiency of the data that has appeared to be replete throughout this process. And one of the most specific ones to address is the fact that before this board can establish exemption, they have to take a look at a number of different things, including the capacity of these schools that are proposed for consolidation to absorb the students. And the information in the record is full of inconsistencies. In fact, the numbers that are established for capacity at Alta Heights, the school that is being proposed for consolidation for Mount George, vary significantly from over 500 to 375 as the student capacity. And why is this important? It's important because this board has determined that the exemption applies based on this faulty evidence. In addition to failing to accurately establish what the capacity is, the board has, I have so much to say, I'm sorry. The board has led to further distrust. And these inconsistencies, the constant inability of the board to put forth sufficient evidence is leading to determinations here that lead everyone to distrust the board. If it hasn't already resulted in distrust, it now most certainly has. And in addition to the considerations there, we believe that the cumulative impact exception applies. And the cumulative impact exception requires that you review additional cumulative impacts pertaining to a number of different things, such as traffic. And in this, it's imperative that this board take the time to engage in the CEQA review that is legally required of you. And,
We need to be fair to everyone else.
yes, yes.
No, we're not ceding time. We're not ceding time.
Well, I've addressed most of it in my letter, but the fundamental point here is that you are legally obligated to apply CEQA in this matter. In making a decision today, you are failing to comply with your legal obligations. And
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Christy Devine.
Thank you for your attention. I won't be long. We're a family who moved here from France 2 years ago. My son is kindergartner at Mount George. And we were amazed when we discovered the IB program here. And coming from abroad, you can imagine how important the international part of IB is for us. And it actually seems to me that this program is sort of the program of the future, preparing world citizens, preparing people who will try to bring more peace among the nations. And so it feels to me like it's a mistake to close this school that has been so successfully setting up this program that seems to me like really looking forward into what is coming for us and for our kids. And in a broader picture, I'm thinking about the fact that we live here in one of the most prosperous places in the whole world, and we're talking about closing schools, and closing these small schools, which we know are the most inclusive schools, the schools that are giving the most chances to every child. And somehow it just makes me feel like our society has, at some point, set the wrong priorities. Thank you.
I think we just had similar sounding names. But what I have for you are some documents. These are signatures from members of our community. I'm not going to take up much of your time this evening. I think a lot of people have spoken eloquently about the things that are most important, and of course I've been up here a few times speaking with you all. But these are signatures from members of our community, of course grandparents, aunts, uncles, and everyone who is taking a stake in this. There are 1,463, and all of these are in the respect of keeping Mount George open. Thank you for your consideration this evening.
Ann Griffin.
Good evening, board members and superintendent. I'm here to express my concern about closing schools in the district. My 7-year-old grandson, Griffin Clark, lives in Yountville and often walks or rides his bike to Yountville Elementary School. At the age of 3 years old, Griffin was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and the world turned upside down for that young family. In 2017, 2 years after his diagnosis, when his parents wanted to register Griffin for kindergarten, they were told by the district that Yes might be closing, so they probably wouldn't want to send their child there. So it seems to me that there was an effort to divert families from sending their children to Yountville, yet the district wants to claim that low enrollment is the reason they want to close it. In hindsight, it sounds as if they were trying to ensure low enrollment. They were disappointed, but decided to check out the other schools to see which one would be best for Griffin. Yet they were not happy about the prospect of having their son miles away in Napa, when their neighborhood school was so close to home. So they decided to go to the school in Yountville to see how their son's needs could be met. They found a welcoming and nurturing environment, and a staff ready and willing to help Griffin in any way they could. The small school atmosphere was a comfort to his parents, who were still adjusting to the rigors of the diabetic regimen. In the years since Griffin started school at Yes, I have witnessed firsthand that unique relationship that a small school has with each student. Everyone knows each other, from the teachers, staff, students, and even other parents from different grades. One time, as I was picking up Griffin from school, I noticed that his blood sugar was dropping rapidly. I searched his emergency supplies for some sugar to give him, but there wasn't any, so I began to worry. Just then, another student sitting near us spoke up and said, "Oh, I know what he needs. I have some chocolate. I can give him a piece." This student knew Griffin and knew all about his diabetic condition, and he was a 5th grader. On a large school campus, that might not happen. Proximity was also important during a recent diabetic emergency that began at campus and ended with Griffin being rushed by ambulance to UCSF Children's Hospital in San Francisco. Had my daughter not been able to get to the school immediately, things could have been much worse. Can you imagine sitting in traffic on 29 while your child is having a medical emergency? I'm a recently retired teacher in another district, and the unique characteristics of this campus are not always seen everywhere. I'm also a former two-term school board member from Fairfield Sassoon Unified, so I'm well aware of the serious considerations you face. During my time on the board, we managed to stay fiscally solvent in extremely challenging circumstances while still keeping schools such as Sassoon Valley open, which was one our superintendent wanted to close. But we board members made the right decision to keep it open. My final thought to leave you with is this: what is a town without a school? Will Yountville be just another glorified strip mall for tourists? What will you do with the school site? Does Yountville really need another tasting room or Michelin star restaurant that only the rich and famous can afford? Please consider these thoughts before you decide to take my grandsons and other wonderful students' school away. Thanks.
We have reached the 45-minute or the time allotted. I would, hold on, just stop, all right? This is a meeting. Just let me finish, okay? I would like to ask the board to extend the time another 15 minutes, and then we will evaluate again after the 15 minutes. Yes? Wallace W. Hawks and Logan Schmitz.
Wallace Hawks, that's me. My wife and I have 5 children. We moved out on 2nd Avenue in '75. And we took our first child to go out there, but he couldn't because he was too old, so he had to go to Silverado. Our other 4 children did go to that school. And when I first moved out there, I said to myself, what is this junky old school doing out here? And why do I have to send my kids to this school? Well, it didn't take me very long to find out that my thoughts were exactly wrong. That is the best school that I've ever seen in a long, long time. When I was a kid, my family lived in a place called Shipyard Acres. Does anybody remember that place? Okay, thank you. Well, we lived there, and then the war was over, and so we moved across the river to a place called called Stewart's Dairy. And my dad was an old guy, so he could work on that, no problem. And so he worked over there for I don't know how long, and then he decided to move on the other side of the river to another dairy and worked there. So he did that. When I was in the 1st grade, I went to a place, I think it's Shears, don't quote me on that. And so when we moved across the river, I had to go to the school at Shipyard Acres, and I was in the 1st grade. And that was fine. And then I went into the 2nd grade there, and it was hard for me. It really was hard. And so I worked as hard as I could, but my mom would ask me, do I need some help? And I always tell her no. I did need help. And I passed that grade, and then I went into the 2nd grade. About halfway through the 2nd grade, we moved to another part in Napa, and that was at Lincoln School. Remember Lincoln? And they were using different teaching than I was getting at the other school, and it was like they opened the door, told me to go in there, and shut all the lights off for me, and that's the way I was, and I thought really good that I'm going to pass, but I didn't. So then we moved up to Grass Valley for another class, same class up in another town. So far I've been in 3 schools, And then I went through there about half a year, then moved back to Napa to, what school was that? Not Salvador. What's the school out on the highway? Salvador, yes, that's it. Thank you very much. And that was the fourth school I was in for the fourth grade, and I finally passed. And that's really, and the different schools I went into, I didn't know anybody. So that was real hard for me to do the schooling that I should. I didn't know any kids or anything, and it was hard for me. But what I'm trying to say here is, if these kids go into different schools, they're going to lose a lot of their friends, not going to know, and the teachers will get them for the first time, and they're not going to know the child that's coming to see them. That's the main reason I want to tell you. And I think it'd be a really, really good thing to really think hard on a way to keep those kids here. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Logan Schmitz, and I just kind of want to say that my little brothers go to the school, and I don't want you guys to close it because I learned how to be like an IB student, and just because it's just an all-around good school.
Dugan Molnar and Mallory Macedo.
Hello, my name is Duggan Molnar, and I am Alexi Rexton. We have passed out our Mount George program of inquiry to all of you. This is the plan. The special secret sauce that makes our school so unique in learning approaches. Please look it over. You will find kindergartners learning about rules and responsibilities helps us to contribute society. You will see second graders beginning open-minded and understanding how inner beauty can allow us to see beauty in others. And look at the fifth grade. This year, we will be learning that people have the power to initiate changes through revolution. Isn't that amazing? We don't have much time to talk, so I'm just going to say that attending a school with an IB program has made a difference in so many families' lives. The IB program fits all of the goals that NVUSD claims they would like to see in all Napa schools. By closing Mount George and eliminating the IB program, you are not working towards your own goals. You can't just say we need money and conclude that closing our amazing schools is the solution. This is my IB profile. Portfolio. Since my kindergarten year in 2014, I have been saving pieces of my schoolwork that represent my journey as an IB learner. I'm in 5th grade, and my Mount George school education, along with my 5th grade exhibition project, will be forever preserved in this portfolio. My 2 younger brothers will have many years of empty pages in their portfolio if you close our school. I have an idea. Why not postpone closing Mount George by 1 year? Enough time to thoughtfully plan our IB program and to be transferred to another site. Lots of people have talked about how the school closure process has been too fast. You are the decision makers. Put the brakes on and please save IB for another NVUSD elementary school students to come. Thank you.
I just want to make sure that that was Mallory and Dugan.
That's
Oh,
Duggan, and then Mallory is me.
Okay, got it.
And you pronounced it right, so thank you.
Okay.
You guys got it right on the last try. Good evening, Board of Trustees, Superintendent. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of Mount George, our IB program in our community. The district has invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in making Mount George and our program what it is today. It takes 2 years of candidacy to even be considered for an IB program. As an NVUSD board, we need you to be providing our families with choice of special programs, and instead, the impending vote is to take one of those programs away. By closing Mount George, you would take away our choice. We need more programs like Mount George, not less. Inquiry-based with a culturally diverse curriculum and global perspective from day one. Our kids start Spanish in kindergarten and carry that through 5th grade. Our curriculum is aligned with Vision 2020, and let me remind you that we are only one of 3 schools in the district maintaining the sustaining status. You are the deciding factor in keeping Mount George International School open, that has been open for 84 years and fostered multiple generations of Napa families into who they are today. You are the deciding factor in keeping the school open that has had consistent open enrollment over the years, outside of the open enrollment snafu. I keep hearing that the reason the schools were chosen is because of the low geocode population and the high open enrollment population. My children are open enrollees. We sought out this school. I hope that the high open enrollment population instead tells you that it was worth it to us, all of us, to come out here each day from across Napa County. Now we are all being forced to tour other schools all over the district and weigh options, and I use the word forced intentionally. Options that in some cases do not compare. Your top-rated schools across the district are impacted. There are only a few spots here and there. By closing Mount George, we would have to compete with our community for those few spots at a comparably rated school. I've had some of you personally tell me to consider Bel Air for their AIB program, and I absolutely will. I ask, though, instead, will you value our community enough to fight for it the way we all are tonight? By closing Mount George, the board is making this district less marketable. Parents review schools before purchasing homes. Parents review schools before enrolling their child. Mount George is a gem that will attract these parents and has for decades. We need to make NVUSD great again. We do that by fostering programs like the ones at Mount George. Make the right decision and keep Mount George open. Thank you.
Lucy Revale and Jason Hutchings. Lucy Revale?
She already spoke.
Oh, that was, okay. Eve Bartlett. Yeah, right, got it.
Hi, I'm Jason Hutchings. I'm a Yountville resident, and my son is a first grader at Yountville Elementary School. And I just want to preface my comments by stating that in my life, I've learned that every time you point a finger, you've got 3 pointing back at you. So I'm going to point a finger here tonight, but I just want you to realize that I know I'm not perfect, I'm not infallible, I'm only human, and I know you guys are human too. But I have sat through all these 7-Eleven committee meetings. I've sat at every board meeting from June up till now, and I've seen the result of years of certain behavior that this district has exhibited, and there's a word that comes to mind, and that word is skeezy. And I've seen it, the grief that you've put these parents from these schools in, the grief that you've put these kids at the school through, the grief that you've put your staff, your faculty at these schools through, and also the schools that these kids are going to be going into. So that's why I use that term. Also, too, the extortion that you've put Yountville through for the past 20 years or so. The disrespect that you've shown that town. The disrespect that you've shown the supporters of that school in Yountville. The disrespect that you've shown the children of Yountville. That's the reason I use that term. And you might take umbrage at that term. I take umbrage. I take umbrage at the disrespect that you've shown. So 4 guys walk into a bank, right? They got ski masks on, heavy metal. They leave the bank. They rob the bank. They left victims in there. There's 4 of them. There's also one guy that's sitting in the car, and he's the getaway driver. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a gambling man either, but I'd be willing to bet that that 5th man, the driver, he's going to be in some serious trouble too. You guys are that 5th man right now, all right? So it's time to think before you keep driving, okay? It's time to turn the car around, all right? Let's be on the right side of history here. You know, we're all human. I get it. The conquistadors were human too. But were they on the right side of history? I don't know. Let's make the right decision, guys. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Eve. I'm a 5th grader at Mount George, and I've been at Mount George since kindergarten, and I just wanted to say that I probably won't see most of the students I am friends with ever again, and IB is very important to me and has shaped me as a person, and it is even more sad because there aren't very many IB elementary schools, and it's very sad also to know that other kids won't have the same experience I had, and because I had like a great experience and I want other kids to have that experience. Yeah. Thank you.
Mary Ann, I really, okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mary Ann Arianson. My 2 grandsons go to Yountville Elementary School. And I agree with everything that Mount George has said here today, but I also want to address Yountville. And I think the main difference with that school is it is a town school. You're not just closing some random school in Napa. You are closing down a town's school. I have been to that school as a grandparent, and I can tell you that that school is supported by the community, the businesses, the vet's home, everyone in that town. If you've gone to the parade there, it is an institution. It is not something that should be closed, ever. It's been there for over 100 years. And if you say that the school is under enough kids in there, it's been sabotaged for I don't know how many years because people have been saying, that school is going to close. Are you sure you want to send your school kids there? If you give the town of Yountville the opportunity and time to be able to come up with a plan, I can tell you that that town will make that school work, and they deserve to be given the opportunity to do that. Thank you.
We've reached the 15-minute mark. I have, I think we can probably accommodate the rest of the people here if we're okay. So we're going to go ahead and go through all the cards, starting with Lydia Mondavi, and then Sarah.
Thank you, Board. Thank you, President. Thank you, Dr. Massetti. I'm Lydia Mondavi. I am a Yountville parent. We have talked about budgets, and we have talked about deficient budgets. So I would like for you to analyze budgets with me tonight. I mailed surveys that we did at Yountville Elementary School to the district over a month ago I have yet to receive any correspondence. That survey is over 35% of our population stating that they are asking to leave the district. That is $350,000 if they all leave. Say it's half. Say it's $125,000. Are you willing to make that gamble? We spent $200 and something thousand on Mr. Pearson's demographer report. There is numerous mistakes in his report that I have sent questions asking, why have we accepted those mistakes? Page 20 states declining enrollment projected at 1,368. Page 21 states declining enrollment of 96 students. Page 22 states discrepancies of 16,515 versus 16,526. On page 23, on page 28, on page 38 states 1,368 declining students. Furthermore, 147 states 1,465 declining students. This discrepancy is 97 students throughout that demographer report. He clearly knows his work, however, was very fast in his reporting and made numerous clerical errors throughout the report. 97 students is $970,000. Add that to the 35% that could potentially, that have said that they are asking to leave the district. How saving $400,000, approximately, if you saved all $400,000 annually, how does this equate? In year 3, we show the budget balance back in the red of over $500,000. Please take time to analyze your numbers, analyze your data, and look at the financial reporting. We are very concerned that you are going to lose a lot more money in the years to come with the siblings and the families that are leaving the district. Please take time to review your data. You spent $200,000 on it.
So I didn't do any research. I didn't do any research. I only have experience, and I only wrote this in the car. There's not enough on it. There's not enough to say all I need to say on this piece of paper. So, but I do know that I've built up a lot of friendships, and this school, and it's important to the students here. It's important to the students, not just there's a lot of students that won't want to stay in the district. Even if you're going to close Mount George, please, and Yountville, note that we're probably not going to stay in the district. We're probably just going to leave. There's probably going to be a lot of it's probably going to lose a lot of students rather than gain money. You're going to lose a lot of students. I know this because there are a lot of. I just know this because it doesn't seem like the right decision to close Mount George. It's our school, our community, our school that we want to keep open. Thank you for your patience.
Kaylee, and then Katie Clark.
My name is Kaylee, and I've gone to Mount George for about 5 years now. And I've invested in the IB unit for for about 5 years. And I have learned over my years at Mount George that to be caring to others even if they treat you badly. Mount George is what teaches me how to treat others and how I want to be treated. Mount George's community is special. And it would be fine if we switched schools, but the point is, a lot of fourth graders only have one more year here, and even 1 year is special, to hang out with friends you probably won't see in the future. And even if I have a bad day, I'm always happy to come back the next morning. And even if you think kids my age don't have an opinion, we do. Thanks for your time.
Katie Clark.
Hi, good evening, members of the board. My mom already spoke, so I feel like she really touched on most of what I wanted to say, and I've written letters to each and every one of you. I live in Yountville, and my son is in 2nd grade, and I also have an incoming kindergartner. I have watched this process unfold, and I don't feel that it has been done fairly. And I feel that the whole argument of there being low enrollment in Yountville does not make sense when we've been pushing people away from the school for as long as we have. I know I can speak for that. That's what happened to me when I went to the district and called and to get information, and I know many other families that have faced the same challenge. So I ask for more time. I ask for you to please rethink your decision if you're planning on closing these schools. Our kids are counting on you, and these are 2 wonderful schools that should not be closed. I do not believe that it's going to solve this financial crisis. Thank you.
Ruby Campbell and Lisa Phyllis.
Good evening. My name is Ruby Campbell. I am a Mount George alumni. I'm 15 years old, and I'm currently attending Napa High School. I'm sorry for my shaky voice. It's not because I'm nervous, it's because I'm completely outraged that this is going on, and incredibly sad. I've volunteered every year at Mount George. Sorry, I'm really not trying. I've volunteered every single year at Mount George since I have left. I know many people here have spoken before me with emotion and just outstanding facts. Great research job, you guys. And I am so grateful for them. But I'm especially grateful for all of the children, all the kids who go to Mount George and Yountville and all those schools that are here supporting it. Because these are the children that you're going to be affecting. I love Mount George, and I'm so sad that it's going to close due to the district's incompetence and mismanagement of funds. It was brought up earlier that the schools need more money, but the money just needs to be managed correctly. I'm also extremely disappointed that the district is closing 2 schools without a solid plan for our teachers. With the closures of these schools, you are displacing students, teachers, families, and most of all, you are destroying communities. As you can see and have seen, many Mount George families, teachers, and even students have come to this meeting tonight to give speeches, and they've also made posters. I know I've mainly been talking about Mount George, but no matter what school we're talking about, it's still a community, and this is just one of the communities that will be torn apart. In school, since Mount George, and they've continued to tell me through middle school and high school, they tell me that everything I do is a learning experience. And I hope that this is a learning experience for you all. I hope that you learn how to manage funds so there will be no more school closures, possible job losses, and communities destroyed. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lisa Phyllis. I'm a Mount George mom. I'm a mother of 5. Mount George is my neighborhood school, so don't tell me we don't have enough cool kids here. Molnar's 4, 3, how many? Hold them up. 4, right? We have students. We have construction happening in Napa. I don't know if you've heard the news, but the population is booming in the Bay Area. We need our schools, this is short-sighted, to close them now. I am that rural family that the nice, eloquent lady spoke of earlier. I have mud in my toes and hay in my hair, but I came here tonight because you need to understand what you're doing to these kids. I have a alumni, he's 6th grade in Silver Rod Middle School, straight A students. Props to the teachers in this room that helped him achieve that. I have baby twins. My baby twins have been coming to Mount George with us every day to drop off, and they are looking forward. They are so excited to go to that school next year. I have a kid in an IEP that would have been lost in any bigger school. And again, thanks and props to his teachers in this room. My 1st grader, speech therapy, like his IEP, again, props to the teachers in the room. This school is unique and special. It is short-sighted to close it now. You are going to be regretting it in 3 years when we have people needing unique schools that fit their kids. Thank you.
So with that, I'll close the public comment section of these 2 items and open it for board discussion.
Mr. President, could
At your pleasure. Do you have specific questions, or would you like me to? Yeah, please.
Excuse me, one of our speakers had some criticisms of your report, and I was wondering if you could address those.
So, are you speaking of the comments by the attorney, or the comments about the land use and the traffic report?
About the land use and the traffic report.
Yeah, and I believe that the criticism was that the standard that was used in the traffic report was not the current standard. And the situation is that there were regulations, the new CEQA guidelines that were put into place in 2018, and they were phased in. And so what the lead agency can do is, by the July 1st of 2020, you must apply that standard, but you may apply it beforehand, and that's actually the direction that the guidelines suggest.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
I will open for discussion from the board. Do you have any questions of the? We'll go item, well, since the speakers spoke on both items, K1B and K1C, I will allow discussion on the board for both items at the same time.
Okay, I'll start. So before I participate in today's discussion, I would like to address the fact that my wife is a teacher at Mount George Elementary, and I have a 5th grader at Mount George. And my other child attended school there at one point. A few people have asked whether these facts raise a conflict of interest that prohibits me from participating in the discussion or voting on the proposed closure. While I did not believe that they do so, it is a fair question, and I thought it prudent to look into it with District's General Counsel. General Counsel and I examined both Board Policy 9270 and the Fair Political Practices Act and concluded I have no disqualifying conflict of interest that prohibits my participation. Key to the review are these facts. First, there is no financial impact on my family that will result from any decision on this matter. Whether or not the school is closed, my wife will still have a job with the district, and my children will still have a school to attend. Second, any impact on my family is not unique. We will be impacted in the same way the public at large and in the same way as all the other families whose school children attend the schools that may be closed. Since there is no financial impact on me or my family, and we are not uniquely impacted, I am not prohibited from participating unless I believe that I am so biased for personal reasons that I cannot be objective and that I cannot make a decision that is in the best interest of the district as a whole. I am confirming to you tonight that this is not the case. I have analyzed the proposed question before us using the same criteria that should be applied no matter which school is being considered for closure. These are the criteria that I will discuss with my colleagues of the board tonight, and the same criteria that I announced at our last meeting on Tuesday. Before I begin that discussion, I want to raise one more board policy that I believe is both pertinent and that I heavily considered before tonight's board meeting, and that is Board Policy 9323. That policy emphasizes the absolute duty of a board member to participate in voting on important decisions before the board. Our Board Policy 9323 states, "The board believes that when no conflict of interest requires abstentions, its members have a duty to vote on issues before them." There are few decisions as important to this board as a decision whether to close a school, and since the district's general counsel has confirmed that no conflict of interest requires me to abstain, I feel very strongly that it is my duty and responsibility to speak to this critical decision and to voice my opinion and vote on it. As I articulated last week, I am not convinced that this decision should be made on the basis of the number of students in the resident area, as the board has the ability to draw the lines for the school resident areas and could redraw the lines to make any decision based on school boundary favor almost any outcome. I take the closure of these schools very seriously and would prefer that we would not have to close any of the schools mentioned tonight. But we are facing such dire financial pressures that I believe 2 schools must be closed for the financial well-being of the district as a whole. Mr. Pearson has ably demonstrated through his boots on the ground tour that we have too many empty seats at too many district schools. We have already laid off teachers, slashed positions across the district, made charters pay their fair share, and stopped the building of a school we couldn't afford to operate. And yet, we still have more cutting to do. I remain of the belief that the first analysis here should be, are all 4 of the small schools that we're considering for closure meeting the academic excellence expected of a small school program? The answer to that question is clearly no, as West Park is orange in math and yellow in English on the state profile, while the other 3 schools are all achieving at a green level in math and English. The most similar school to West Park is that of Alta Heights, which has an even greater population of low socioeconomic students, but has achieved green on the state dashboard in both English and math. It is widely believed that the small schools are more costly to run. Therefore, I must look at the cost-benefit analysis and examine whether our educational dollars are going the furthest. The district educational dollars are providing a strong academic return on investment at the 3 of the 4 small elementary schools. It appears that the district is not getting a good return on its investment of money for the small school at West Park. As such, I believe that it and not Mount George should be on the chopping block, as it is not living up to the small school promise of high academic achievement. The operating costs of West Park further demonstrate that it is the school to be closed by the fact that it costs approximately $100,000 more per year to run, and the district would save that amount each year by closing West Park instead of Mount George. Further, in my estimation, the value of the land is much greater at West Park than at Mount George and would yield a greater ability to repair our other district schools, which desperately need updating. As I stated previously, Yountville is achieving at a high academic level in conjunction with 2 of the 3 other small schools. I understand and appreciate the special place that that school holds in the lives of the residents of the town of Yountville, as the emails and speakers have made abundantly clear over the various meetings held by the district. People who live in Yountville hold this school in high esteem and believe it is an important part of their town identity and its operation. It is, therefore, with a heavy heart that I say I believe Yountville Elementary should close. The analysis is fairly straightforward for me. The school costs approximately $520,000 per year to operate and unfortunately, it educates less than half of the students of the next smallest school we're considering tonight for closure. This is unfortunately economically unsustainable due to the harsh budget realities that we are currently facing. Even the county, which oversees our financial solvency, is pressuring the district to close small schools to save money, as our reserves are much too low and our expenditures too high. Unfortunately, Yountville Elementary is the starkest example of this problem. I love that the town of Yountville has truly embraced their school and uses it for so many activities, like Little League. But as a district, we can't continue to subsidize residential life for the people in the town of Yountville, as that is not our mission as a school board. Even if we could afford to do so, which we clearly can't, it would not be fair to the residents of the students in NVUSD to use our precious few educational dollars to subsidize life for residents in the town of Yountville. For those reasons, I will be voting yes to close Yountville Elementary.
I am so fortunate to come here twice a month to try and resolve the voices in my head. I hear the voices of those that want to retain the status quo, those that want change, and those that want us to lend our voices on behalf of their battles. I hear those that come. I hear the silent majority that doesn't and just expects us to do the right thing. It's just that there is an agreement on what the right thing and for who. Non-specific accusations have been made of staff discouraging enrollment in specific schools, primarily Yountville and Mount George. This is not a new accusation. It occurred a decade ago. It is not staff's place to counsel prospective parents out of any school, no matter how well intended. It is staff's place to administer and implement board policies fairly and even-handedly. If you want the board to stay in their lane, you as a staff member need to stay in your lane as well. And as you will see in a moment, the board has historically been slow to adopt the most painful measures. I am neither compelled to accept staff's data, point of view, or opinions, nor am I required to accept at face value the assertions of parents, community members, and other interested parties promoting the status quo. I have considered a range of data, opinions, and experiences not advanced by any of the advocates here. I have been involved with the reality of schools off and on my entire adult life. I've reached an age where I am more reflective, not only of my own experiences as a student in the 60s and 70s, but in providing fiscal oversight of a private school through its sponsoring organization in the 80s, my own children's journey through the system, and my time on the board. There are things you miss when you are in the moment that somehow become clearer upon reflection. Philosophically, bigger isn't always better, and neither is smaller. There are real challenges and risks to running small schools in small districts. Just ask some of our better per capita funded brethren up valley. Making a decision is a decision. Being unable or unwilling to make a decision is also a decision. Part of my own research and reflection touches on the environment around us. By considering our involving circumstances now, as painful and as uncomfortable as they are, we avoid even more painful decisions later. We like to think of ourselves in Napa as unique, special, and entitled, but we are not. Part of my role is to consider the macro environment that inform our situation, because we are not anywhere near as special as unique as we think we are. We are subject to the same circumstances, constraints, and effects that are being experienced up and down the state, especially our coastal communities, and in some ways across the nation. We are not the only community grappling with right-sizing our school sites for the school-age population we have now, not the one we once had. It is not all doom and gloom. We have more resources and opportunities than many communities, and we are stepping up to the plate to address painful decisions in a timelier fashion than other school districts, who have been living this reality for far longer than we have. Quoting the superintendent in Vallejo, 20 years ago, Vallejo City Unified had a population of 20,000 students in 22 schools. Today, our student enrollment is 12,000, yet we continue to operate 22 schools. Vallejo City Unified is one of 8 or so districts that went bankrupt since '91 and has been taken over by a state administrator. Sac City Unified last month had their budget rejected by the Sacramento County Office of Ed for the second time. 2013, Sac City Unified closed 7 of 10 schools under consideration. Marin County schools are grappling with the same basic demographic challenges we are. 30% of households have K-12 age children in them, below the state average of 34. People are living longer, aging in place, reducing the available housing stock. Pasadena Unified is a district similar in size to us. Closed 1 last year and is reconsidering the need to close 4 others to avoid a fiscal takeover by LA County Office Ed. Last month, Pasadena Unified voted to close 3 elementaries on a 4-3 vote. The vote by the 3 had proposed closing 2 more. The decision ended up leaving over 900 seats of excess capacity from the other 2 schools that were considered. Sacramento B, July 9th, 2019. The number of California students enrolled in private schools has fallen by 25% since 2000. The decline is attributed to increased competition from charter schools and suburban public schools, struggles related to the Great Recession, a decline in adherence to religious faith. Per CDE data, the 19-year private school decline for Napa County is a minus 22%. Sacramento B, October 7th, 2019. Twin Rivers has begun discussing closure of several schools due to declining enrollment. Student Housing Committee is recommending 4 possible grade configurations. K-6 at 700, K-8 at 900 students, 7-8 at 1,000 students, 9-12 at 2,000 students, and they're still considering closing 2 elementaries and a high school. School districts are driven by demographics. As we will see in a moment, we have always been driven by demographics. We are addressing our challenges earlier. We will be the better for it. There are some places I choose not to go, and not addressing declining enrollment in an assertive fashion is one of them. What local elected official doesn't want to be associated with ribbon cuttings, program expansions, and new programs? Instead, what comes with all that is making decisions that don't come easily to anyone. Not the community, certainly not all of it, not just your subset, the district administration, teachers, parents, or the elected. I appreciate the discomfort I witnessed in the 7-Eleven committee, not in some perverse way, but that the committee grappled with topics that are hard. I get that the proponents of the status quo, you want what you want. I can't ignore the emotional content of the decisions before us, but neither can I let it rule the day. We hear from all sides of the debate, and that includes those that don't see why we just don't close the smallest, least neighborhood-oriented schools. Let's go over a little history of the district and set the context for where we're at.
Okay, come on, we were quiet for you. So I'm requesting, no. Please.
The district, having to review and consider its enrollments and trends, is far closer to the norm than anyone is letting on. So I think it worthwhile to step back into the Wayback Machine with Mr. Peabody and Sherman. A generation ago, NVUSD faced declining enrollment. We have few employees and few community members that remember that era. From a February 20th, 1981 Napa Register article, they reviewed the enrollment history of the district and its predecessor districts. An enrollment decline is not new for Napa, though it has not occurred here in 40 years. Following an ambitious building program in the early 1920s, school enrollment entered a 20-year plateau. In 1940, the district had 20 fewer elementary students than it had in 1920. World War II brought Napa schools out of the enrollment doldrums as families entered the area to take jobs at Mare Island. The post-war baby boom created tremendous demands of new schools. During an 18-year stretch that began in 1947, the district built 18 new elementary schools and 3 junior high schools. With the addition of Vintage in '72, the district can accommodate 15,900 students, but enrollments never reached that level. The enrollment decline has been felt most sharply in the central area of Napa, where older homes and more mature families provide fewer students for the school district. Schools such as D.T. Davis, Puebla Vista, Lincoln, and Snow are operating at 60% or less of capacity. Around the edges of the community where new homes are being filled with younger families, enrollments are near capacity. These schools include Browns Valley, Northwood, Soda Canyon, and Mount George. The South County schools, Napa Junction and Donaldson Way, both have 63% of the students they were built to accommodate, reflecting anticipated growth in American Canyon that has been yet to materialize. Remember, this is all being written in 1981. March 18th, 1975, the NVUSD board is considering maintaining teacher aide staffing levels. At the same time, it is reported that Alta Heights, El Centro, McPherson, Mount George, Snow, Westwood have experienced declining enrollment since the funds were first allocated. April 11th, 1980, the NVUSD board received a declining enrollment committee report that outlined a variety of approaches, some of which would be deemed drastic by today's sensibilities. The district experienced a drop from 14,900 in 1975 to 11,900 in 1980 to an expected 10,200 in 1984. A more precipitous drop than we expect in absolute terms, and certainly a greater percentage drop. The committee's report included the observation, the committee realizes that no easy solution exists, that if action is taken to reduce the impact of declining enrollment, any action will be opposed by some segment of the community. Declining enrollment of the mid-70s to mid-80s had a genesis in multiple factors: decrease in average household size from 2.67 to 2.4, economic considerations, high price of housing, slow growth policies being adopted. The approach to predicting enrollment is similar as it is to today: birth rates driving kindergarten classes 5 years later, other grades predicted on 5-year cohorts. In the decade prior to 1980, Vintage High was built. Lincoln, Yountville, and Scheer had new buildings built to meet earthquake standards. These projects were completed just as other macro-level demographic considerations were taking hold. April 6, 1983, the Napa Register reports, continued drops in enrollment are forcing Napa Valley Unified School District to study whether 3 more schools should be closed 2 years from now. Yountville, Canaris, and Woodin Valley elementary schools will be less than 60% full. The announcement comes only a year after the district was forced to close 4 schools: Lincoln, D.T. Davis, Soda Canyon, and Ridgeview. The board has historically been slow to close schools. In our own era, I watched, before I joined the board defer making a decision on Woodin and Capel Valley schools for most of a decade. My first year on the board, I had a hand in trying to find an artful way forward for those schools. I regret, in some ways, not providing a second to Francis's motion. A year later, on a 6-1 vote, the board closed 3 schools and deferred further action on 2 other candidates, Mount George and Yountville. It is now, as it has been for the last 40 years, about excess capacity. Excess capacity equates to excess costs. There are parents of 15,000 other children just expecting us to do the right thing. Their right thing is different than your right thing. They don't appear here because they believe we will do the right thing for their children and the community. Yountville. Per the Napa Register, February 27th, 1981.
I will, if we are interrupted, I will clear the room. Suspend the meeting and clear the room, so please.
Suggestions were made to add a 7th and 8th grade to the already K-6. We traveled a similar path with Yountville Elementary in the last 10 years, letting them keep the 6th grade, and in the end it was the kids who told the adults they were ready to move on to the typical middle school experience, and the experiment ended. May 28, 1982, an article on low-income housing regarding 8 homes to be built under a self-help construction scheme, complete with deed restrictions. Town council members indicated they were looking for families with children to participate to bolster the declining enrollment of Yountville Elementary. I think in the past I've touched on the median age in Yountville. More recently, March 2017, the Yountville Sun, it was noted the transient occupancy tax provides 65% of the general fund revenue, while 12% is from property taxes. The editor pointed out that when a town's economy is only 12% from residents, it is vulnerable to events such as earthquake, flood, vineyard bugs. Chef Hurley remembers when Yountville had a local bakery, a hardware store, and a doctor, but they couldn't survive. As a side note, schools are funded first by property tax and in most cases secondarily by state general fund subsidy to bring all schools to at least the state minimum guarantee. We, the school district, see no portion of TOT, and only indirectly through the state any portion of sales or income tax flowing through the state general fund. The town is reliant on TOT and sales tax to provide essential public services that they are responsible for. I am immensely fond of Yountville as a community and as an elementary school. I wish all our schools were as loved and as well supported. However, fondness is not enough. 70% of Yountville's enrollment comes from other school attendance areas, effectively contributing to more and other small schools, which from a system-wide perspective is not helping. The data surrounding Yountville Elementary has reached and exceeded my comfort level for cognitive dissonance. Yountville Elementary is a bit over 25% smaller in enrollment than when I started on the board. And arguably, Yountville Elementary has been underutilized for more than 36 years. It is not our role, as some have suggested, to prop up the town of Yountville. Yountville Elementary was effectively given an extra 10 years ago. I reluctantly will accept the recommendation to close Yountville Elementary School while encouraging the district to work towards a mutually satisfactory outcome on child care and after-school programs. Similarly, 74% of Mount George's enrollment comes from other school attendance areas. Same contribution to more and other small schools, which from a system-wide perspective, we cannot continue to go along with. There appears to be little interest in IB beyond avoiding other schools, or at least the students in other schools, as so few people go on to IB at middle school. IB is but one approach to teaching. The success of the Mount George IB program no doubt owes much to the dedication and skill of Mount George teachers, but it also correlates to fewer socioeconomically disadvantaged students and families. You can't bring up the matter of achievement and not acknowledge how differently you look from the district as a whole. If you weren't successful with the student body composition you have, I would be taking issue with it. Regardless of the district's intent to provide an option for the Mount George school community to stay together, my assumption is the Mount George community fragments to pursue their own individual interests, both parents on behalf of their children and teachers pursuing their own interests. I anticipate a variety of decisions to pursue other IB programs, existing or in development, to other schools supporting largely middle-class parents and students. I understand the personal and public policy benefits of open enrollment, but I also feel like an enabler of self-segregation, and I have moved from unalloyed proponent to one with some ambivalence. I will simply add, in the real world outside of Napa County, the world is infinitely more diverse in many personal attributes and experiences. I will accept the recommendation to close Mount George Elementary School. Once again, we NVUSD are at the forefront of societal change, not by choice, but by circumstance. Our communities are changing your communities are changing underneath your feet. Slowly enough you may not notice, but fast enough your institutions have to react. What I have come to appreciate in the discussions regarding small schools and in looking with a more critical eye at capacity in general is that growth in housing starts is not enough. We are also impacted by turnover in housing stock, specifically turnover to people with K-12 aged children. In order to maintain our enrollment, we need a constant influx of children, not just a one-time infusion based on new homes being built. The existing housing stock greatly outweighs any incremental additions being approved and built. Whether a school is organized as public or private, charter or district, magnet or other special program, or classic, if folks are doing it right, investing today's money in today's kids, then one is always looking over their shoulder at the fiscal impacts. Private schools are impacted by most, if not all, of the factors that the public schools are. Declining birth rates, aging homeowners, declines in building due to recessions, the changing makeup of homeowners. They compete with us and we with them for teachers, principals, support staff, and students. I am also convinced our parents don't understand how schools are funded. If they did, they would be angrier at the system of funding than the decisions we are forced to make. In the end, we will educate all who come. And with that, I think I'll wrap it up.
One of the benefits of having senior in time served, I apologize. One of the benefits of having senior, and I mean in time served, not age, board members is that they can provide institutional memory and the historical perspective that gives broad context to the decisions made this evening. What I can offer is my more immediate perspective from my attendance at every 7-Eleven committee meeting, my review of the data, presentations that were submitted, the breadth of questions and comments from parents, community members, and the advisory committee. While the issues are challenging, I admired the ferocious nature of so many of you, the passion and tenacity you brought to each meeting. It is your job to advocate for your children. It is our job to advocate for your children, along with 16,000 others, and in an equitable fashion. You are a community that values education. I heard parent after parent from a variety of schools, and not just those potentially impacted, sing the praises of their community and the education their children are receiving from the NVUSD school they attend. We have real and viable options for all of our students. I saw an administrative team bring rigor and integrity to the process, because I do believe in the necessity of empirical data to drive critical decisions, to define our intentionality, and to clarify our goals. I believe in the transparency that was brought to the table and a process that was not required but deemed necessary to bring all the stakeholders together. Personal opinions aside, hard decisions will never please all, but doing what is right, holding what has been defined as our moral imperative is our job. Trust isn't earned when you do what one wants you to do, but by doing what is right with what you are entrusted with, and we are entrusted with 16,000 students. Many of you at the podium have requested that we evaluate the data with more rigor, ask the hard questions, and be analytical in our approach. I will speak for myself, I have. If the decision was to be predicated on how you love your schools, your faculty, wanting to keep an existing community intact, this would be a different conversation. But that is not the criteria for this decision. This decision is based on the critical need to reduce operating costs, maintain financial sustainability, be proactive as we address the issues of declining enrollment, cash reserves, and increasing pension costs. Declining enrollment is an issue for school districts across the state. Over half of the 1,000 districts in California are grappling with this issue, and I assure you that number is on the rise. We are responsible for overseeing the financial integrity of this district. We are not in a position to make assumptions or take risks on maybes. We may not jeopardize our financial circumstance, lose sight of our mission, or make decisions predicated on any emotion that would have long-term impact on those 16,000 aforementioned students and their families. One cannot ensure financial integrity with cash reserves at 3.4%, which at our current burn represents about 3 weeks of overall expenses. And managing our cash reserves are critical to cash flow and mitigating funding volatility. Pension expenses across the state consumed about 8 to 9% of school budgets last year, and they are expected to increase to 11% by 2021. We have too many existing elementary schools to serve our existing population. And I do respectfully have to agree to disagree with your interpretation of the data presented. The criteria for our district circumstance cannot be negated. It directly correlates to the issues at hand. And in my mind, that is best practice. If we don't make these decisions in the short term, we are going to have long-term severe consequences. It is our job to take the long view. Much dialogue has been centered on the type of curriculum, but what we offer at every school is a good education. And it is education that gives us knowledge of the world around us and changes it into something better. And while the delivery vehicles might be different, our end game is the same. My hope, my true hope, is that you will take the courage and commitment that you have displayed over the last couple of months and continue to invest in the betterment of education. This community will be better for it. Thank you.
Thank you. I can't read with my glasses, sorry. I really appreciate the historical perspective given by Mr. Shunk. I attended many of the meetings, and we sat back there and, rolled our eyes and said, we should be up there, we can do better. And here we are. I was witness to several discussions about whether or not to close schools, and what I saw was a board full of delightful people who wanted to please the audience, didn't want to make a very difficult decision, a painful decision, and let things slide for a while. And it wasn't good for the district. It really wasn't. I remember when the Capel Wooden Valley School decision was put off. I remember when Yountville Elementary was years ago was considered for closure. That was bumped. I remember the arrangement made to keep the sixth graders, etc. So many memories, and I appreciate what you said about the funding for our schools. It is completely ridiculous. There are people in this town. Last year, there was a recall over a couple of years ago, an attempted recall that failed. And when talking about it with people, I discovered that some people thought that the mayor of Napa ran the public schools. And it is murky, the understanding about the financing of our schools. But I know that when people say we need to run schools like a business, I was just reading about a certain luxury brand, LVMH. Well, they can pick their customers. We can't. We take our students as they come to us. And another thing that's really strange is sitting around every spring waiting for the governor's revised budget. I mean, you should come and listen to some of our discussions. And to echo Mrs. Jankowicz, and I've said it before, I'm really glad to see everybody here. And I'm glad to hear the children come up and speak. They're great testaments to their families and their schools. And sweetie, I think you will see your friends again. You will. You're too nice. They're going to want to stay in touch with you. Don't worry about that, please. But we've had so many cuts this year, and David Gracia detailed them. Teachers, cafeteria workers, custodial workers, administrators, the independent studies school. Yes, we decided not to go ahead with a school in American Canyon. I haven't seen a whole lot of class solidarity here. It's not exactly Lord of the Flies, but I have noticed that many people are very willing to suggest another school be shut down, just not theirs. But that's human nature. Just like wanting to put off a difficult decision and make people happy. It's human nature. And I have heard some threats about going to private schools. I can't stop you. And I remember years ago when a very popular alternative program was shut down on a local campus. The inequities between the upper middle class students whose school was on the campus of some poorer students just got to be too much, and the program was shut down. And I knew people who sent their children to that program, and they were furious. And they said they were going to go to private school, and indeed some of them did. The school population dropped. A dynamic principal appeared. There's a hardworking faculty over there. I visited Pueblo Vista last week. If you're interested in test scores, they're moving up. They've got quite a writing program going on. And I was very, very impressed with what I saw. And I also visited Mount George School, and I visited the International Baccalaureate School that is Bel Air, where I spoke with the principal. She is the same individual who brought International Baccalaureate to Mount George, and she's got an IB program at her school. Now, IB is not at all cookie cutter. There are differences among the different schools, but I really liked what I saw. I liked what I saw at all three of the schools. In fact, I've been doing a lot of school visiting, and I like what I see. So I'm saying it's tough. It is tough. I'm a sentimental person. I'm very, very attached to the past. In fact, if you came into my house, you would see I'm so attached to the past that my house is basically a fire hazard. And I was looking, I was doing some cleaning up, which I do about every 20 years, and I found this interesting book that I actually read when it came out 14 years ago. The Limits of Prosperity, Growth, Inequality, and Poverty in the North Bay. I read it. Nobody else paid attention to it. Here we are. But what we're doing is it did say that the service jobs were going to be increasing like crazy in Napa County. And it's really not sustainable. And right now we've created a culture where young families find it very difficult to live in Napa. And these are the people who normally fill up our kindergarten classes. So if you're able to live here, pat yourself on the back. You're very fortunate and probably very clever too. But it made me kind of grin because I loved school myself, and I thought that it was all there. I could find everything I needed to know, written down somewhere. And the key is to get other people to listen to it. Yountville, many people have spoken to me about Yountville and asked, what is a small town without a school? And by the way, I should congratulate Mayor Dunbar, who I believe you're going to be the president of the League of California Cities. Okay, well, I just wanted to say something else for you to do because I know you're a busy person. And I do thank you for your service. But what Mr. Shunk said is correct. The TOT, the tourist industry, has displaced the residents. And in other words, a small town, what is a small town without a school? Well, this is a small town now with very, very few students, very, very few children. And we have to face that. And it's the result of decisions made 30 years ago. But we do have a beautiful new school, Willow School. That could be your new school home. Parents from Yountville Elementary and Mount George have extolled the virtues of small schools. It reminds me of the old small is beautiful back in the 60s. The notion that small schools were better, more successful, more nimble, started back in the early 90s with Bill and Melinda Gates. They promoted small schools and they declared them to be the savior of public education. However, once you eliminated factors like family income, the small schools, that they really weren't a great leap forward, and they were very expensive to maintain. The Gateses really didn't publicize this expensive flop. Why should they? I mean, it's human nature not to. Again, but they developed an enthusiasm for other things like evaluating teachers. And from my old days on the city council, one way you could stop things was to bring up the environmental quality report and talk about traffic. And I admit the school traffic, thanks to our open enrollment and our magnet schools, is indeed crazy, and a good argument perhaps for attending your neighborhood school. And I don't like to make people unhappy. I'm that conventional. But I would be truly unhappy if I didn't think that we have other schools where your child will thrive. And by the way, I am actually pretty precise with my language. And when I say your child will be fine, that's not a synonym for mediocre. Okay, we've got fine dining, we've got fine linen napkins. Okay, we've got he's so fine. I mean, fine is a good word. And again, thank you to the children for coming. I hope you continue to stay involved. It's been a real pleasure to see you. And I am going to support, I'm sad about it, I'm going to support the closure of Yountville Elementary and Mount George.
I'm going to keep it short. It's past 10 o'clock, and it's been a long day, but it's necessary. I'm first of all just very much humbled throughout this whole process of everyone's participation, including our children. I thank you for your input via email, via public comment, and I also thank the dedication and the time and the commitment from the 7-Eleven committee members. And I also want to thank all the kids who are staying late for their courage to come up to the podium. It's not easy, and to express your voice, which it is 100% and always welcomed, because this is your district. What makes, to me, a school a special school is the evidence is right here in front of me. It's the people. And as an individual that's gone to 6 different schools before high school, it's really the people that surrounded me that made the most difference in my education career. I'm very thankful for all of them, because it is those that have set it up for that to happen, unbeknownst to me as a child, that all of this around you needs to take place. All the planning, and it's not just from one day, it's the planning from years and years, referencing Trustee Shunk's reference of going back to the history. And I know that today, change is not just only impacting our kids today, but it goes back to generations, and I find that that I want you to know that I acknowledge that and that I hear you when you express that. But it really goes back to the people, and our district is full of people like you, and we're looking into the opportunities of what's ahead of us, to continue to grow on that culture that we all want, to expand and to continue to all the schools in our school district. To say that the decision that we're making is a financial one is an understatement, right? It's not just financial. It's looking into our strategic plan. That has given us direction, because it's not just about school closures, it's about everything else that we have to look at. It really is the tough decisions. No one wants to be in a board where you're looking at the tough decisions, but I am very proud of the work that's being done by the team, by the process, and by the committee, that I trust in that process, and that I believe has been transparent and clear to everyone, and that we are reaching a point where we're just looking at the time, right? And we're running out of time, and we cannot put ourselves in jeopardy down the road to put us at risk of being taken over by the state. And that's something that's happening throughout the state. So we're sitting here thinking more globally. And I know you are too, but it is quite complicated, the whole entire process, to say the least. But I do trust that it is really up to all of us and up to the people where this is going to be impacted, where you carry that with you, and I trust that that will go in the right direction. Ultimately, you as parents know what's best for your children, and it is our duty for our school district to provide you for all those different access points, which we are working very hard to do. I too will support and accept the recommendation of the 7-Eleven committee. Thank you.
Ms. Martin.
Thank you to our parents, our students, our teachers, staff, administrators who have helped during this entire process. Of course, also our 7-Eleven committee for their dedicated time and admirable commitment to the committee and its reporting. Parents, my decision today is based on facts investigating, study, and I think like the rest of the board, some of the rest of the board, off of the 7-Eleven recommendations. I'm not deciding today on what ifs, if some projects would go along, if whether the city or county or other private projects are going to happen. I made mention of this in American Canyon, and since there's momentum here, I'd like to continue having this conversation and come with us as a board to come to our California School Board Association and demand full and fair funding for our schools. I mean, this is a real fight. I mean, asking our governor for this, asking our state legislators, our county, our city, because it's creating this domino effect. Mrs. Waters had made mention of this in the last meeting. We're not making babies. I can't tell you to go make babies at the rate that we would like for them, but we need to talk about affordability. I talk daily with farm workers and laborers throughout the valley, and it's sad to me to say that they don't live here. They used to live here at one point, and so they don't have that choice of actually having their children here in the county, and yet even though their schools are not open enrollment, they stay in Yuba City, and they're taking that drive at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to get here to tend to Napa County, where their kids don't reside. So, like I said, this is creating a domino effect through the state of California. Dr. Massetti can shed some light on this later down the road, but I mean, through Northern California, Twin Rivers, Mr. Joe Shunk shared about that, and my heart really goes out for Oakland Unified, because if anyone saw what was happening down there because of their closures, I mean, it went into violence. And so honestly, it's not something that the school board isn't doing. It's really what we're not doing as a community. And it's not just here at the board meeting, it's outside of the board meeting what we're willing to do. And how many board meetings you're coming out here to support the real and true work that we're doing, not when we're faced with a critical situation or decision like what we have now. When we listen back, and I'm sorry to bring this up, but there's a little bit of apologies that need to go through, and that is, during this process, there were other children, there were other schools, there were other administrations, teachers, principals, and staff that were hurt through this process. And that's almost like some of you even reacted like these schools were in like an allergic reaction, excuse me. NVUSD thrives because we have great schools, we have great administrators, and we have great staff and principals. If we lack in test scores, then we work harder. That doesn't make us a bad school. I believe you all when you say we have wonderful schools, but it's not just wonderful schools, it's a good district, and being fiscally solvent is something that I'm looking out for. I'm truly sorry it has to be me making these decisions. When I decided to run for the board, I was a parent that was unsatisfied. Having a private agenda is not something that I have. I haven't even touched my subject because it's this small that I could have discussed with my own school. And unfortunately, when I have to think about the 16,000 other children that I have to deal and love to deal with, then it really does hone in, and I get a little emotional because I have kids in the district too. So these decisions and my recommendation to move forward are to close both the schools tonight.
So I'm not going to go over ground that's already been covered. I want to thank the board members for their statements. I do need to thank the 7-Eleven committee. Some of the comments that were made here this evening minimize the work and dedication that was demonstrated by the members of the 7-Eleven committee. We asked, several of us asked friends to join the committee, and friends who are prominent in our community, and they backed away. because of this, the reaction they feared from colleagues, friends, and families. So they worked hard, and we should appreciate the work they did. I'm going to, please, public comment is over. So, and I want to thank the board for their diligence in reviewing all the material, attending the meetings, putting themselves out there. I will clear the room. A little self-policing might be good. This is not a speech. It wasn't written. Look, I would be happy in the 15 years I've been on this board, I've attended over 250 meetings. In those meetings, we have discussed subjects that range anywhere from head lice to school closures. I've spent a greater part of my adult life doing this, missing events with my children to help to work for the students and parents of this district. This level of disrespect is unwarranted. This is not a discussion. This is not a discussion. What I would like to do is finish my comments so we can get down to the business at hand. I did my student teaching in inner city schools in Sacramento, primarily African American. I did 2 internships while I was in graduate school. One at Sacramento City High School, Sac City, back in the 70s, rough place, and then at McClatchy, which was equally as rough. I worked for 38 years as a counselor and professor at Napa Valley College, working to promote the success of the most underrepresented and underserved students in our county. I'm 15 years on the school board, so when I take, and I'm not even the most qualified member of this board, I'll have you know. So when I, enough about me. This has been difficult. It's been difficult every time we've done this. I have faced threats of elections at one recall. I actually truly believe in the whole concept of democracy. I went out and looked for people who would run for this chair in my district. My intention, my promise to my wife was 2 terms. Those 2 terms were over 8 years ago. No one else will run. I encourage you to run. But let me make something very, very clear. It is much easier to campaign than it is to govern. Remember that when you go out, when you file your papers. There has only been 1 contested election in the last 8 years for school board position. This is one of the most important elective boards for the welfare of our communities, and we've only had 1 contested election. Not only that, we've had to appoint people to open chairs. So the dedication shown by the members of this board far outweigh any criticisms we get for not being open to this. I'm going to get off my soapbox. I apologize, but I cannot stand people disrespecting a group of citizens who have given up their right to say things in public without being accountable for them. So for those of you who think that I do not value academic success, I don't know where that came from, because I've dedicated my whole professional life to just that. With that, I will reluctantly accept the recommendation of the 7-Eleven committee. Dr. Massetti, do you have anything?
I will wait till reports. Go ahead and call for the vote. Or have you call for the vote.
Item K1B, resolution to close and consolidate Mount George, resolution number 20-08. I will entertain a motion.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Shunk, seconded by Ms. Water.
Roll call. Trustee Water?
Aye.
Trustee Jankowicz?
Aye.
Trustee Gonzalez Mares?
Aye.
Trustee Hurtado?
Aye.
Trustee Martin?
Aye.
Trustee Shunk?
Aye.
Trustee Gracia?
No.
Item K1C, resolution to close and consolidate Yountville, resolution number 20-09.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Shunk,
I'll second.
seconded by Ms. Martin.
Roll call. Trustee Water?
Aye.
Trustee Jankowicz?
Aye.
Trustee Gonzalez Mares?
Aye.
Trustee Hurtado?
Aye.
Trustee Martin?
Aye.
Trustee Shunk?
Aye.
Trustee Gracia?
Aye.
Position on the agenda, I'd like to just make one statement. I want to thank the school board for their support through this process. I know it's been a very difficult, grueling consideration of factors, and I think tonight demonstrated that many of you, took the decision very seriously. It's one of the toughest issues that a district governance team can address, school consolidation and closure. We greatly empathize with the impact of this decision that has on all the students, families, and staff at both Yountville and Mount George. Staff will be at both schools tomorrow to begin to start the support of the transition process. I want you to know that as the superintendent of schools here, so short in my tenure, it is very, very difficult to have to confront this decision alongside the school board to my left. I completely understand your frustration, your disappointment, your dissatisfaction. However, like many of the trustees have named, the NVUSD community finds itself confronting this challenging issue alongside many other California public school systems that are underfunded. Our colleagues in school boards in other Northern California districts that are currently grappling with the same issue or have closed schools in the last couple of years, 18 to 24 months, you have San Bruno Park, Sacramento City, San Juan Unified, Twin Rivers Unified, Oakland Unified, Redwood City, San Rafael recently closed schools, Windsor Unified, Evergreen School District, Ravenswood Elementary District, Oak Grove School District. This is not an exhaustive list. We're all navigating a very tough issue. It is an undesirable issue. We are all in this position for two primary reasons, and I really need the community to understand it, because there needs to be some serious rallying in communities as strong as the one here in Napa to address the bigger issue, and that is that California public schools are dramatically underfunded despite the multi-billion-dollar economy of the state. And the entire state, as a consequence of that issue not being dealt with and other public issues not being dealt with, are dealing with declining enrollment rates of children. We need children in the state to keep schools open. California school attendance, just so you know, has been declining statewide for several years. And now we are the victims. It is requiring districts to reduce the number of schools they can maintain. Statewide enrollment has dropped from approximately 5.5 million to 5.3 million in just the last couple of years, and anticipated to continue to decline at dramatic rates due to a lack of affordability. Since most districts continue to decline at dramatic rates, since most districts are state-funded and the dollars flow from the number of children enrolled in school districts, the cost of maintaining small schools is not attainable. Maintaining under-enrolled schools, like our governance team has outlined so eloquently and specifically with lots of facts, causes districts to have to do all kinds of other actions: lower salaries, cut positions, reduce programs for children. NVUSD has done a lot of those in my short, close to 18 months of tenure here. NVUSD has even closed schools when the enrollment was growing in the past for operational efficiency and consolidation, like Trustee Schenk explained so eloquently. But now, at a time when our enrollment has steadily declined and our financial situation as a result has become so precarious, we need to proceed with this tough decision and more, thinking about the approximately 16,800 students of the district at large. I promise you that we will get through this. Our community has the capacity to move forward. I have learned in my year and a half here about the strength of this community. Now is when we need to unite. We need to think bigger than just 1, 2, 3, 4 schools, this school, that school. See, when the community unites around the big issue that I've tried to articulate, they are usually stronger. They will get better outcomes. NVUSD has demonstrated a strong history, and it was demonstrated by the 4 students who spoke at the beginning of this public meeting, that we can be better than we are today, that we can produce really, really outstanding results. Those students are a manifestation. So we can make decisions for individual constituents, or we can make it with the big picture in mind. Rise as a collective community. In the past, where we were a growing school district, we could afford thinking about this constituency group or that constituency group. We could afford it, but we no longer can with this very, very stark reality that, like Trustee Shunk painted so clearly, existed 40 years ago. I think it was during Dr. Hansen's tenure. Isn't this room named after him? Most importantly, making decisions based on divisions within our district has created a very non-sustainable approach to doing things. I cannot be an effective superintendent with that approach. I would not be doing my work in service of all children. It's ensured very inequitable access. I've walked all your campuses. Not all your classrooms have the same access to technology. They don't have the same access to curriculum. They don't have the same access to quality facilities. We have lots of work to do around great programs everywhere. We have a history of inequitable access to professional development, to the most important ingredient in educating your children, which is our teachers. And that has not been equitably accessible to the 900 plus teachers that work in this school district. And for those of you who are here who may not know, a couple of weeks ago, we took a first big step in starting to work as a system. And we brought together all of our educators for the first time in that way in recent history, a few decades from what I've been told by those that have been around a lot longer than me. And many of them recognized, I received emails and comments that coming together as an organization of educators recognized that we have more strength in our numbers, we have more opportunities when we come together collectively. Now, at a time when, because of issues bigger than ourselves, our resources are stretched, we need to come together. We need to stay focused on making sure that the district's fiscally responsible so that we can have excellence and equity to a better education for all students. I know tonight we're talking about elementary schools, your elementary parents. You will soon be middle school parents, you will be high school parents, and you will care about the condition of that middle school, and you will care about the condition of the high school. And so we need to think beyond just today's moment. And I know that that can be really, really difficult, but the governing team to the left is responsible for that. So we look forward to supporting individual families and employees in the transition, to support taking our next steps. You have my commitment that my staff will work relentlessly to make the transition as smooth as possible, beginning as early as tomorrow morning. And I encourage you to provide us feedback through the process, and at any point in time, if we can do a better job through this transition than we are doing in that moment, please feel free to provide us that feedback, and we will do our best to support you. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Yes.
can I move to extend the meeting?
Yes, why don't we take a break,
A bio break?
a bio break?
That would be welcome.
We'll start back at 10:40, 10 minutes.
All right. And
Okay, we're back in open session.
I move we extend the meeting to 11:30, and that way we don't have to extend it any further, and we'll have a goal.
I'll second.
Okay. And- Yeah. So should we move that presentation up?
Yes.
Yeah, so let's do that. Yes, please.
Thank you, members of the board. I'm going to introduce Dr. Sarah Williams, the Director of Assessment, who is going to run through the the California Dashboard Local Indicators. You might remember that last year, it was the first year that we were asked as a district across the state to indicate, to report on what are referred to as local indicators.
I was going to make a joke about it's 11 o'clock, must be time for local indicators. Must be time. So local indicators are attached to the dashboard indicators, the dials with the colors that I talked to you about last year. Local indicators allowed districts to create a local context for the implementations and initiatives that are happening in the district that might put some frame around the results that the public sees when the dashboard is released. Okay, Manny, I think it's a distance thing. Thank you. Perfect. So these are our local indicators. You'll notice that there's some stars by a few of them at the bottom because they are applicable to county only. So basic conditions, state academic standard implementation, parent engagement, local climate, and broad course of study is what we'll be talking about this evening. So basic facilities is what the first local indicator talks about. And so Napa Valley Unified's been fine there for quite some time. Our teachers are credentialed. Our teachers of English learners are also credentialed for that. We have a couple of vacant teacher positions, and then we report also on incidents. Now remember, these are last year's, not current. Incidents of facilities not meeting good repair standard, and out of a potential 350, we had 52 incidents reported. Thank you. The implementation of state academic standards refers to the things that we do as a district to help our teachers understand what the standards are, the nature of the rigor of instruction that is required. And to that end, these are the things that we've done as a district and continue to do to implement the standards, including a number of implementations, a lot of training, lead positions and training for that, and supporting teachers and administrators as needed around professional learning, including the last great big October 18th day. Parent engagement, these are the, again, it's a self-reflection survey, so these are the indicators around parent engagement. There are 5 indicators. Initial implementation is the middle one, and the questions that you can see for yourself there are the questions that the survey respondents address. Thank you. For school climate, we took a look at the Healthy Kids survey findings. We had some positive trends around academic motivation. It's a question that students respond to when they are asked how hard they're willing to work on assignments and to stick with work when it gets difficult. We have low reported incidences of bullying and harassment across the board, reported by all students. High reported rates of teacher responsiveness when students report that they are being bullied or harassed, and relative low substance abuse rates. Our areas of need are around when you look at the subgroup, we have needs around LGBTQ and transgender students reporting bullying and harassment at far greater rates than their straight peers. That trend continues and includes homeless students around academic motivation, not feeling as hopeful about school or that they might be able to do better. They have higher rates of substance use and abuse, And those three subgroups are followed closely by foster youth when it comes to substance use in particular. An average of 43% of our LGBTQ students who report that they report that they have considered suicide at least once, compared to 13% of non-LGBTQ youth. Broad course of study refers to the opportunities students have in the district to receive a well-rounded education, including advanced placement courses, CTE classes, and other dual enrollment, things of that nature. These numbers are reporting the degree to which NVUSD offers a broad course of study along those indicators. Do you have any questions? Hi, Robin. Thank you. So the self-reflection survey was sent to internal stakeholders that would have an understanding of the professional development and learning that has been offered, and or that they were the ones who executed it. So this went out to all of our district teachers on special assignments. It went out to all of our administrators, and it went out to district level teachers on district assignment, special assignment as well. How long have I been doing what, Ms. Water? Oh, thank you. That's a good point. So the local indicators began when the dashboard began, and these surveys have changed slightly every year since its release. The questions and the nature of the scales have changed. So not a lot, but a little, and this is relatively new. Mm-hmm.
This is not really a question for you, but as I was looking through the LCFF and looking at one of the categories, and one of the prominent categories was chronic absenteeism, I just reflected upon that question coming up, and is that on our list? Chronic absenteeism?
Yeah. It's on the dashboard, but it's not a local indicator. Mm-hmm. Correct.
State indicator.
Yeah.
I still want it on. I still want to make sure it's on our list to explore.
So maybe I missed it. It's getting a little late. Priority 3, respondents cited initial implementation for all topics. Priority 2, you listed what the 5-point scale is, but I missed what they scored it as.
Oh, thank you. Diverse internal, so what we're talking about here is what we responded to, and there was a variation between initial and fully, but I wanted to share with you more what the reflections were around what it was that we are doing to implement state academic standards.
So like a 3.5, or I mean...
Yes, but I want to make sure that I'm clear around this. These were internal stakeholders, and so if I'm the one doing the professional development, I might feel that something's fully implemented. If you're an administrator and your site has a number of brand new teachers, you might think differently about that.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to Trustee Janqua's point, we will be bringing the presentation on the state indicators in the dashboard next. Local indicators go first. We're doing those first.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Board and student representative.
Oh, what we've done?
Yes.
Okay, well, hey, along with 2 of my colleagues, I went to the American Canyon High School Choir. I took a former student with me. She enjoyed it a lot. Saw one of her old teachers. I went to Napa High School for lunch last week and bought a big game ticket and some raffle tickets. I couldn't attend the ribbon cutting with you all at Snow, but I did stop by and visit the principal and look around. I visited Pueblo Vista, where I was quite impressed. I visited Mount George, where I had a very nice time and had some intense discussions. And I went to Bel Air, and I told you about that. And I also had a meeting with a parent.
I'll be really quick. I did a visit with MVLA. I had postponed for it with Alejandra Uribe about 2 or 3 times due to some emergencies that I have for work. we sat down together, we looked at numbers, and then she discussed her budget with me, and then there was just questions that I had sent over to Dr. Massetti's staff and got clarity around that. Also, I did ribbon cutting at Snow Elementary School with everyone here, but Miss Waters, we missed you. And I did an interview with the state. I believe it was myself, Rosana, and Marianne Valles. We were together, but I'm sure there was other people involved for Valley Oak to get a certification for model school, which they will, and they got it. So I'm very, very happy to report that out. And so I thought it was really easy. I was really nervous because I had the state in front of me, and it was easier than what I thought. And so in speaking with the state, I think it became really easy. And the reason why I say that, it's Valley Oak is where my son is going, and so it was very easy speaking about what Valley Oak has done. So, hey, props to Valley Oak.
Snow and the NBC Legislators Breakfast.
Okay, you know what? I'm tired. Parent meetings, met with our CBO because I had some questions that he clarified for me. American Canyon, ribbon cutting.
I attended the legislators' breakfast as well, and then the American Canyon High School Fall Choir performance was very well performed by the students and well directed by Mr. Butler. I visited Valley Oak High School, heard about some of the cool programs, and at that time they were still waiting to hear if they were going to be the model school, so I'm glad to hear that that came through for them. I got a couple of the cool Valley Oak stickers that they have now, so my kids are excited for their water bottles. Attended the Vintage and Justin Sienna football game and the fall ribbon cutting at Snow. Was a little concerned about the lack of books in their new beautiful library. Those shelves were almost empty. We got to do something about that.
Yes, I agree.
Attended the fall concert at Silverado Middle. Enjoyed the advanced band performance, but didn't win any of the raffle prizes. I had to reschedule my meeting at McPherson. Apparently the principal was a bit under the weather, so I hope he feels better soon. And I attended the district branding meeting, which was our last data gathering meeting before we get some preliminary ideas, which will be presented in January.
And I also attended the ribbon cutting at Snow. Anyone else? Superintendent and executive staff.
I think, given how late the meeting is, staff is going to pass on reports tonight.
Facilities and bond update.
Given how late it is, I think we're going to pass on that. Everything's going great, just so you know.
Okay.
Oh, good. I'm reassured.
So we'll move to consent agenda. Background information on these items are provided to the board prior to the meeting. A common motion takes action without discussion on roll call vote unless the discussion of an item or items is requested by the board member or members.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Gracia, seconded by Mr. Shunk.
Roll call. Trustee Water?
Aye.
Trustee Jankowicz? Aye. Trustee Gonzalez Mares?
Aye.
Trustee Hurtado?
Aye.
Trustee Martin?
Aye.
Trustee Shunk?
Aye.
Trustee Gracia?
Aye.
Thank you. Now we move on to item K1, K1A, intention to sell Vandeleur property resolution number 20-07.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Gracia, seconded by Mr. Shunk.
Roll call. Trustee Water?
Aye.
Trustee Jankowicz? Trustee Gonzalez Mares?
Aye.
Trustee Hurtado?
Aye.
Trustee Martin?
Aye.
Trustee Shank?
Aye.
Trustee Gracia?
Aye.
Item K1D, revise intra-district open enrollment, Board Policy 5116.1.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Mr. Gracia, seconded by Ms. Martin.
Roll call. Trustee Water?
Aye.
Trustee Jengowitz? Aye. Trustee Gonzalez Mares?
Aye.
Trustee Hurtado?
Aye.
Trustee Martin?
Aye.
Trustee Shank?
Aye.
And Trustee Gracia.
Aye.
Instructional Services, item K2A, Memorandum of Understanding between On the Move and Napa Valley Unified School District.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Mr. Gracia, seconded by Ms. Gonzalez Mares. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. K2B, Contract for Services with ProCare Therapy.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Ms. Water, seconded by Mr. Gracia. All in favor?
Aye.
K2C, Local Control and Accountability, Federal Amendment, and Annual Title III Local Plan Update.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Gracia, seconded by Mr. Shunk. All in favor?
Aye.
Contract between Sylvan Learning and Napa Valley Unified School District, McPherson Elementary.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Oops. All in favor?
Aye.
Sorry. Item K3A. I've forgotten what SBC stands for. Thank you. School Planning Instruction 16.19-17, call for bids, Phase 1 of district wide fences, fencing.
District-wide fencing.
Thank you.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Gonzalez Mares,
Well, second.
seconded by Ms.
Quick question.
Martinez.
I've got some questions too.
Oh, here we go.
So don't call for a vote too quick.
I won't call.
3 schools for the 1.2 million, and I know we've had community members already ask us about access to playgrounds and
Yeah.
fields.
Yes.
So this may be premature, but at some point, we're going to have to talk about it, so.
Yes, so what we're planning to do with the schools is essentially we want to protect our assets, which are our school buildings and our students during the school day, and then after school, we want to also continue to protect our assets. So there will be offenses in these 3 schools that will accomplish that. They will also accomplish that the community can enjoy the campuses on the afternoons and on the weeknights and weekends. There will be access to pretty much everything that they have currently access to at all 3 of these campuses.
I was hoping to get a little more information about the plan of how we're enclosing the 3 schools that we're talking about here. Do we already have those plans, or is this
We do,
to
we
develop?
do, and we could bring them back at some point if you'd like to see those plans. It's hard to, we need to have it on a larger piece of, paper or something, just to so you can get the detail with it, because it would be very small, put up on a screen, but we could certainly provide that for you if you'd like.
I would like.
Yep, we'll take care of that.
Okay, with that, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Do we want to do the board, given the lateness of the hour? So we'll put that off until next meeting. Additional suggestions and comments from board members and superintendent? Well, I have one comment before, it'll be short.
I have.
Can we thank Howard?
Thank you, Howard.
Thank you, Howard.
I just wanted to, Walter Hampy was my high school social science teacher, who led me to, who pretty much helped me become the professional that I am today. He passed away last week. He was, after he finished teaching, he went to work for a winery, but always with education in mind. And then he helped our special needs students through programs and advisory board. When I became a professional educator, he insisted that I call him Walt. I called him Walt once. He was forever Mr. Hampy. And then I was notified that my mentor at UC Davis, Dr. Jose Roberto Juarez, also passed away last month. I just wanted their names mentioned one more time in an educational facility that values what they gave us. And that was a clear picture of what education was about, how to use education for the enrichment of those around us, and to make us all advocates for our children. So, Walter Hampy, Dr. Jose Roberto Juarez, thank you.
You know, I met Mr. Hampy, and I always called him Mr. Hampy. He was one of the first people I met when I came to Napa County, and he was a great man.
I just have a comment, that an email has gone out. We've talked about, this is, refreshing our memories, and I know it's late, about the impacts of the changes to the public charge rule, as it impacts our vulnerable populations when it comes to families being really afraid to enroll their kids or themselves into affordable health coverage or CalFresh programs in the area that impacts us. Well, actually, all those areas impacts us, but also our free reduced lunch programs that directly goes into our Title I funds. That there is a community, locally, there's a community-wide effort that is engaging the community to not just the community members, but trusted messengers out there. And in fact, parent liaisons have participated in these trainings to be well aware of what this rule is about and how can you educate and inform those individuals who are coming with a lot of fear and concern of their immigration status, and enrolling in public programs has been a concern. And so that's something that's needs to be, that is coming to our board, and so I just wanted to share those, as the request is pretty much to ask for the board and the school district to continue to partner with those efforts, so that we can all together say the right messages to our most vulnerable populations. So.
Thank you. I'm just going to make one quick comment. It just seems like, gosh, every time we say we got to go, we don't really have to go. But it's being part of the Latino Heritage Committee with Napa County Hispanic Network at the Boys and Girls Club at the Napa Clubhouse. I know everyone's going to be busy with big game on Friday, but they're going to start building altares for Dia de los Muertos. And so they're going to start having a grand celebration on Saturday. So we know it's going to be crowded out in their parking lot. Just want to let you know that they have a huge program going to go on. So you're looking at Ballet Folklorico from Napa High. This is their first year, and they did some fundraising there. UC Berkeley student mariachis will be there, Mariachi Luz de Oro. And then also you have Ballet Folklorico from St. Helena, Los Diablos Oaxaqueños, and then some danzantes. And then, of course, on Sunday, they'll close out, and it's just the altar exhibition at the clubhouse. So it's their first time doing it. We used to do it at Harvest Middle School, so this is the first time that they're bringing it to the center of town. So I'm really, really excited because there's a lot of momentum behind it. So I hope you guys can join.
I can probably combine on Sunday.
One quick question for staff, and hopefully you've given it a little thought, because our future will depend on the answers our community provides in 5 months. Are we permitted, and have we thought about how we can encourage our parents and community members to respond to the census? Because so much of that enumeration ends up in allocations that we
Yeah.
deal with for the next 10 years.
Trustee Schenk, I just approved for staff. We've included census information on our website.
Okay.
Do we have staff participating in the complete count committee that the Napa County County of Napa is organizing?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, I would,
You send me information.
yeah, there's a lot of great work happening. It's just about us relaying the message.
Yeah,
So we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
We haven't
Yeah.
gotten any information, but if you can forward
Yeah.
us some information.
Okay.
Okay.
So moved.
Second. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I am not going to leave this room until the guy that said we were